Okay, this is a lesson that's on something called Get You Again games. All right, there are games played in order to divert attention and to basically uh, create disbelief and discredit, and to attack credibility. Right. So that's those are standard ad hominem attacks. Okay, right here. Right. So the idea is they get you in a way. Well, I'll just read this. The purpose of a Get You Again game is to do harm to you in some way, to you or your property. It can either be you physically or to your property. The first, which is the first Get You, which is then intended to get the real goal, which is the second Get You. And that's to provoke you to complain or say something, which they record on tape, and then they capture that, and then they twist and spin it, and shift focus to one thing that's attackable, and they'll then send that out in social reality to all the people in the social network, and they'll use that to say he's crazy, he's lying, he's a false accuser, he's overanalyzing things, he's imagining things, along those lines, and to say that he's delusional or whatever. Okay, so as such, it destroys your perceived credibility in the minds of the masses. And that's the essence of an ad hominem attack. You don't attack the facts, you don't attack the intelligent analysis, you shift focus off of them, and you make something else that you can attack, which then destroys credibility. Right, so you attack the person, not the material. So usually the liar, CIA, FBI perform Get You Again games right after information is presented which is damaging. Right? It could be I teach or present something damaging, and they want people to disbelieve it. Now, the liars also know that 99.9% of the masses will remember absolutely zero immediately after I teach it. But they may retain the overall vague, nebulous, general idea. Right? It's just like fuzzy and oh yeah, they kind of get something, right? Now they don't want them to believe that. So what they'll do is they'll wait a day for that nebulous, empty overall notion to fade and be based upon nothing. Without the facts, which the masses don't remember, it's based on nothing. Now it's easy to attack, right? Just one day it takes. All right. Now they never attack the facts because they'll backfire and reinforce the facts. That's always slapped back in their face. They try to attack the facts, which are factual, right? People may do a fact check, and it'll just be slammed back in their face. So instead, they always shift focus onto something else they can attack. Now, one of the many methods of doing this are Get You Again games, which not only shifts all public focus off of the important analysis, the damaging information and intelligent analysis, and onto a ridiculous circus sideshow, they also destroy the perception of my credibility in the minds of the masses. And this always works every time. So the CIA, FBI have played Get You Again games on my property, on my home, on my body itself with fake threats of harm. They threatened to kill me twice. And the first time, this is way back in 1989, the first time I was actually scared. I was like, holy crap. And then I realized, oh no, they're just playing head games, they're playing psychic games. They're playing these games to intimidate over and over again. In many ways, I don't want to go into all the details, but I just knew that, all right, they're just playing head games again. They don't really intend to kill me. They're just trying to scare me. So the second time they did it, I didn't even react, right? And they never sent signals again, false signals that they're going to hurt me. They started damaging my property after that. They did damage my body, but that was through toxic mold. Much later. That was beginning in 2007. So much later after 1989. All right. So damage. They did actual damage to me with toxic mold, and they tortured the hell out of me. It was crazy. These people are pretty scummy and serious. Anyways, pretty pathetic. Which is the most often used form of Get You Again games, the toxic mold. They whacked me thousands of times. And part of it is intend me to say something, which I use to say he's crazy, he's insane, he thinks he's being followed, and yeah, he's being recorded on video and watched everywhere. Okay, yeah. And damage to my car. So that's the thing we're going to talk about today. So in this lesson, we'll cover get you games playing on my car. All right. First example happened just a weekend ago, and that's why I'm giving this lesson. I want to show you that, hey, this is not an isolated incident as far as people know, right? Well, they don't even believe it even happened, right? And as far as they know, it's the only time it happened, right? But I see it as a long, repeated pattern, and over they do this. Same stuff. All right. And so they just did it over the weekend, and it worked perfectly. People, the masses fell for it. So what happened was I just finished my lesson on exchange theory, which involved discussion of the history of the oil industry, the importance of the economic importance of oil, and then the history of U.S. actions in the Middle East. And as soon as I finished that, which you could say was very damaging, I know that 99.9% of the people remember absolutely zero, nothing. Nothing sticks in their head with this, right? But the rare few will remember some things, right? And then generally have understanding, right? So the CIA wants to get rid of that out of people's minds. So they want to shift focus, and they did so by doing a Get You Again game. They started messing with my computer on Friday bad, and then they did another Get You Again game on my car. All right, we'll talk about that first. Next one, I taught you in lesson number 1. We'll review that, which I bet 0 people remember. It's all just gone. It's just faded, right? When I teach it for a few people, it may, recall some memories, right? But, you're not going to retain the vast majority of facts. It's going to just fade and go fast. All right, so the next one, let's see, which one? Okay, the next one I'll give you, it was a time they got in my car, they damaged my car, at a time when I was highly dependent upon my car to try to get help, when the CIA, FBI were torturing me bad, right, like crazy for 2 years, breaking me down, right, I'm barely walking, my legs are tearing up, I can't even use the clutch of my car with my left leg without it tearing. I eventually tore and lost my left calf, right, because it was so broken down. I couldn't climb the stairs, standing up. I had to climb up the stairs on my knees. All right, these guys are such fun guys. All right, and so it damaged my heart, gave me heart failure. I went from 65% ejection fraction down to 42, right? In less than a year from nothing. I didn't have a heart attack, which is usually the way you get heart failure. You get damaged tissue, lack of oxygen, necrosis, and this whole sequential thing. My lungs were all messed up and destroyed now. Internal organs were constantly in pain, right? Anyways, it was bad. So I was desperately seeking help, not understanding what's going on in my body, having an idea that it was reflex sympathetic dystrophy, all right, and needing my car to try to get help. And during this time, a lot of doctors thought I was fake because that's what was being passed in social reality. All right. So it involved a short. Now, this one here involved a short in my car, and they did another short. And usually the reason why they do the identical one is because they want to jack you up again. They want you to recognize it, that it's them because they did it before. Plus, they think that if they do it again, it's going to get you even more pissed off, and then better ensure that you say something. You react, and then they use your reaction to attack you. All right, now the third example I want to give you involves a lock clip, which are never open on their own, right? They're designed to never open, all right? And it was opened, and so they did that here in the second one, and they did it again, all right? Then I'll give you the first time they strung together a series of damage, right? And the reason why this one here, the second one, they strung together a series of damage. Now, they do that because they know that when they pass their attack, they won't tell you what happened. They'll just say he's blaming people for stuff that happens in his car. Stuff happens to everyone's cars. He's a false accuser, and and they got in this one they got people all riled up and literally hateful of me, right? People were just looking at me with hate. It works so well. Now the reason why they stringed a bunch together is they know that I know in my mind that the probability of all these things happening simultaneously is impossible. And I'll give you a statistical example here, calculation that's very generous in the probability, super generous. And even still, it's like winning. Well, you'll see the numbers. It's just like it's not going to happen naturally, zero chance. All right, but they got me with a lock clip again because they knew that would piss me off. They knew I'd recognize that. They knew that doesn't. They knew that I know that doesn't happen. Then I'll explain to you the first time the CIA strung together. Oh yeah, a series of. I explained that. All right, okay, series of damage, and I'll explain how they whacked my clutch hydraulic fluid system. Right. When I took my car in to get the shocks changed, and then I'll teach you the most recent string of things they did. That was back in like 2013. They haven't got my car too often, lately, right? It's kind of spread out here, and they just finally explained to you the most potentially damaging and injurious game they played. Nothing could have happened from it, but then something. On one end of the spectrum, but at the worst case scenario, people could have got killed, right? Certainly could have damaged my car pretty bad, but I think worst case, if things got out of control, people could have got killed. I'm wondering how the hell some field agents going a little overboard. All right. This is just a sample of things it did to my car. This is standard operating procedure for the CIA, FBI. People are not. I know. After I teach this, people are going to remember nothing. Nothing's going to stick in their heads about this. So what's going to happen is they're going to pass. They'll wait a day, and in a day they'll pass something to create a wave based on none of the facts, and it'll create a massive momentum, in which everyone will say, he's crazy, he's a joke, he's a false accusing liar, and whatever, right? It'll work because no one's going to remember a thing. So, in a sense, I know that going into this is an act of futility because no one's going to remember a thing. But, what can you do? You have to try. So I'll start with the most recent example of a get-you-again game, all right? So last week, I made 3 desktop videos on my lesson on exchange theory, which I used as an example. 1, the history of the oil industry. 2, the economic impact of oil or economic importance of oil. 3, the history of U.S. creation of conflict in the Middle East, right? And how conflict can be used in exchange theory to regain control of oil price, which is the essence of monopoly power. Now, the lesson was very revealing on some of the dirty things done by the U.S. government. All right, so I finished the third and final desktop video on Thursday. All right. So, of course, the CIA want to get people to disbelieve. They know that 99.9% of the people retain absolutely zero facts immediately after I teach it. Nothing sticks. And it's doubtful they really understand intelligent analysis. All right. And once all the facts is gone, that's gone as well. However, the overall vague impression might still be strong, but they also know that since all the facts are forgotten, absolutely zero retained, the overall impression, which was strong immediately upon finishing my lesson, is now based on nothing, no facts retained, and thus weak and easily subject to attack and outright rejection. They know they can get people to reject it. Oh, that's just crazy crap, No one remembers a thing about it, but they'll know it's crap, right? Why? Because social reality tells them so, and that's all they have afterwards. And then the masses will discard it outright, although they remember and understand none of it. The CIA, FBI have many ways of attacking, which I've taught you in lesson 1. However, Get You Again games pertain to ad hominem attacks to destroy the mass perception of my credibility. Right? If you don't believe me, then you're not going to believe what I taught, which you don't remember. The CIA, FBI never attack the facts because that only backfires. It always backfires. Also, what always backfires is immediate attacks. If they attack immediately thereafter, it backfires bad in their face. So they got to wait 1 day at least. That's all it takes, 1 day to wait. So it backfires by either reinforcing the facts or encouraging people to do a fact check for themselves. So they know people won't remember the facts. So it is best to let them die and to assist that by shifting all focus off of the facts and onto some side issue which has nothing to do with the facts but can be used to attack my credibility. Right? In a Get You Again game, the CIA typically harms you in some way for which, 1, they have maximum deniability. Can't prove a thing. Right? 2, the attack is meant to induce me to complain, which is then recorded, and then they already have prepared and thought out in advance a pre-planned attack to utilize what I say, and twist that, pass that to the public, and the masses will see it exactly as the way they present it to them, and it'll make me out to be a liar, crazy, paranoid, just imagining things, ridiculous, a joke. They'll use aggressive humor to mock me, right? That's more powerful. Humor is more powerful than the facts. People can understand a simple, mean joke, and that would have far more impact than a whole mountain of facts which they cannot retain. Nothing sticks in their head. Then all the focus will be shifted off of the damaging information and analysis I presented, with no one remembering anything, and all attention will be shifted onto the circus sideshow, creating controversy, contention, debate, and which then is used to discredit me, making me out to be crazy, paranoid, overanalyzing, a lying, vicious false accuser, or anything else along those lines to get people to disbelieve me, to get an ad hominem attack, right? Then when people don't believe me, they don't believe a thing I said, right? Which they know nothing of, but they don't believe it. So I just finished teaching on Thursday, which means they will wait until Friday to attack me, and sure enough, they did. On Friday morning, the liars launched 2 Get You Again games, right? First, they started screwing with my computer. So right now, my computer, I cannot use the mouse pad, and I cannot use the attached mouse attached to the USB cord. It's not working. But the trackball is working, so I have something. Well, on Friday, they whacked everything. Everything was down, right? Now, this is something that they can deny easily because it's hard for me to disprove it, right? It could be, they'll say, it's something in his motherboard, it's something in his software, it's some dirt in his keyboard, or some bullshit, right? They play with my computer so often, I know it. But you know what? This one is more likely to work on people because they have better deniability. But with my car, they get caught red-handed a number of times here. So we'll go through some of these, right? Now, it's only caught red-handed if people can remember it, and people don't remember jack. They don't. So they know they can get away with it. Why? Because people won't remember a thing about it. No facts remembered. All right, so on Friday morning, they messed with my computer, and then I left the library early, and about 11:30 they decided, well, I'll go shopping, right? Go do some grocery shopping. And I had parked across the street from my apartment, on this short but fairly steep incline, right? Kind of steep incline, and when I started to back out, I put it in reverse, started back out. When I tried to stop, my brakes failed. The pedal went all the way to the floor, and I kept rolling into the street. And there were cars on the other side of the street parked, right? And I was kind of worried that I was going to hit something, and I'm like stomping on my brake pedal again and again and again. And finally, after about the 4th stomp, it firmed up, and it caught, right? And and I stopped in the middle of the street before I hit anything. So I immediately, as soon as my brakes failed, the first thing that came to my head, right, was, oh, my brake lines are cut, right, and I was stomping on the brake pedal repeatedly, right. After about the fourth pump, the resistance returned, and I stopped, right. Now I know that this only happens when the hydraulic piston. Okay, so let me try. This track pad's hard. Here are the brake shoes, right, and pad. There's pads combined, right. They rub against the rotor. This plate here is the rotor, spins, right. These don't spin, and when this piston is, you press on the brake pedal, the hydraulic fluid builds pressure here, pushes this piston, squeezes the pads onto the rotor, and you slow down, right. Now, when it did happen, that meant that the piston itself was pushed back away from the pad, and then when I had to pump it, it pushed it closer, closer, closer. Finally, on the fourth one, it engaged and slowed me down, all right? So that happens when there's an open gap, and usually this occurs when you push back. See, what happens as you use your brakes, the pad gets thinner and thinner and thinner, which means the piston goes out further and further. It's always pushed out, and it stays in direct contact with the pad. Although when you're driving, it's not applying pressure, so there's very minimal friction here. All right, but it's only when you apply pressure that you get better friction and it slows you down. Right, but now when you replace the pads, to get the new thick pads in, you got to push this piston all the way back into the cylinder until it's right, which leaves a gap. All right, so I hope I explained that. And then, all right. Okay, so when I started driving, I heard the brakes grinding. Right, it sounded like the front right side was grinding. So I went to the auto parts store and bought new brake shoes to replace them. Then when I took off the old brake shoes, I took off the left side first, and those two were identical. And then I took off the right side, and one was identical, but one, see the three identical ones, looked like this. Looked like this. See, that's what the brake pad looks like. This is a little bit of anti-seize. I must have had my fingers, right? There's a little bit over here, but all this here is what the brake pad normally looks like, right? Now, this is what the fourth brake pad looked like, and this is all rubbed off too, due to my having to try to brake with this, right? So it's rubbed off a little bit, it's smoothed out a little bit, so it was worse than this. And the most smoothed out part was up here, you can see, right? There's no brake pad, and this is all deeply pitted rust, right? This is like old rust, right? Okay. So each brake pad had black, shiny, metallic sheen with no corrosion on the brake pad itself. There's a little corrosion you can see on the brake shoe where it mounts into the calipers, right? But nothing on the pad because that's being wiped clean and constantly rubbing, right? Plus, I think these pads are ceramic too, and maybe the metal ceramic combination. The fourth pad was completely different and unnatural right here. All right, so what do I got to say here? Now, first of all, brake shoes should have nearly the same wear, right? So the three identical ones had identical wear, about 3 millimeters of brake pad left, and I estimate that to be about 20 to 30,000 miles of pad left, right? Second, if the top brake shoe up here, right, in some bizarre way wore faster, which it shouldn't, right? But let's say somehow it did, right? Then it should not be rusted and deeply pitted for the metal on metal contact. So if it rubs all away, now there's no brake pad at all here. You can see, right? If it rubbed away, right, and there's no brake pad left, right, then the metal on metal, you should get bright, shiny metal. And then the metal on metal contact should polish this bright and shiny, right? All right. but instead it's all rusted. All right. Uh, and there's deep pits. Certainly there would not be these deep pits. Here, there are deep pits everywhere, and they should be even deeper because it's partially rubbed off. And this pad, my brakes now, I replaced them. The right front is squealing pretty bad, right? And that's due, no doubt, because this carved up and screwed up the rotor. It scraped it all up and made it uneven, and that's causing problems, right? So you can see that the cleanest part is up here, right? There's rubbing for some reason. This rubbed first, all right? And but even still, you see there's rust under this part. Now, it should not have any rust below this, right? Like I said, it should be bright metal, but there's even the rubbed off part, there's deeper rust below it. You can see that. That's not going to happen. All right. So it looked like this pad has been sitting in the junkyard for a long time, rusting, right? Right. Only the top part of the brake shoe is cleaned up a bit from the grinding on the rotor, probably from Friday, and there is plenty of rust under that part as well. That should not happen. If the pad wore away metal, then the metal and metal should make this bright and shiny. It cannot rust under layers that are immediately in contact being ground off, right? This cannot happen. Rust, this is being ground off. How does rust get below there, right? If it just starts to grind off. And it just started grinding on Friday, right? That's no way that started grinding on Friday. All right. So my brakes grind for the first time that day, the same day that the hydraulic piston is pressed away from my brake shoe. Now, how does that happen, right? Leaving a gap, causing my brakes to fail when I tried to stop, right? All of this is impossible, although I'm sure liars will come up with some sort of bullshit reason. You know, there's people who want to lie. Someone's going to try to make up some bullshit reason and try to snow people who they know people don't understand the basic physical principles here, and hopefully they hope to get gullible people to believe. And I suspect that a wave was created in social reality using this to attack my credibility. I don't know this for sure because I'm the only person who is not networked into a social reality network, which is designed intentionally and specifically and only to attack me. You know, it's a worldwide network, and I'm the only person not networked in. And that's by design. So I cannot know what's being passed, so I cannot, defend myself. And however, I'm super perceptive, and I'm right, I'd say about 97% of the time, in just picking up clues from what is being passed as to what is, from people, giving off a little indication, subtle indication as to what is being passed in social reality. Right. Okay, so I suspect that this whole brake flop, right, was meant to be a circus sideshow to shift focus and to get people to disbelieve me, right? Oh, he's just a false accuser. He's crazy. He's overanalyzing things or whatever, right? And you know what? No doubt it worked. But you know what? People forgot already. I'm willing to bet they forgot already. What? I didn't fall for that. So the purpose was to get people to not think about my damaging information, and then to think that whatever you said is crazy and ridiculous, and we can reject it, forget about it. In fact, we've already forgotten about it, but now we can forget about the overall idea, the vague general impression, which is the only thing that was remaining. So they did it exactly one day after I finished teaching, which is the classic method. They wait a day, right? Because one day is all that's needed for people to forget the overall general impression. They've already forgotten all the specific facts. Nothing's retained. And then, of course, they don't believe now. And I could tell that it worked. All focus was shifted off the important analysis and onto the unrelated circus sideshow. The sideshow was designed to destroy perceived credibility. And then everyone disregards my important lesson as being crap, lies, conspiracy theory, imagining things, or whatever, right? And they feel good about just throwing it out, discarding it. Oh, now I can just get rid of that. They want to do that, right? So this just helps them believe what they want to believe. The CIA, FBI have been doing this for 30 years. They've been playing these damn games for 30 years, right? But no one remembers a thing. No one sees this when it's happening, right? They pick up on nothing. They perceive nothing. So here's another game that I was playing in my car. This is the one I taught you already, and the one, I just know no one believes it, right? No one remembers a thing here. All right, so this is one in which I sat down and calculated probabilities, right? How impossible the whole thing is, right? But the whole thing's not past, right? What's past is, oh, he thinks people mess with his car. He's crazy, right? And they don't retain the specific information of exactly what happened, right? And everyone was manipulated to absolutely hate me. And I'll explain what happened here. So this happened in about 1991. No, I think it was 1992 actually. I think it was spring of 1992. Yeah. This is my last semester there, so that was 92. Kind of, yeah. All right. Anyways, so I was in my last semester of coursework, and all I had to do was write my thesis. This is for a master's degree in sociology, and I had a day off, and I was going to go study at the library. I got in my car, drove to the library. Here's a sample library. This is not the actual library, but this, just similar, right? And these are the cars parked in front, and here is my car. Say the purple car is mine. I use that as an example. So I drive in, my car starts, no problem. I drive in and I park, right? And I'm at the library, and I'm only there for about an hour, right? And I'm just like, man, I don't feel like doing anything. So I'm just gonna leave and go to the gym and work out. I was like working out more and studying. So I go to leave, and I get in my car and put the key in the ignition, turn it, and there's absolutely nothing, right? There's no lights, there's no sounds, like the little ding dings, whatever, right? Or car door open, or or anything, right? There's no sounds whatsoever. There's no lights whatsoever. Everything's totally dead, right? Now, okay. So what happened? I tried to start my car, right? And then in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, they got me, right? I know they got me. They've been screwing with me at this point for 3 years now. 3 years they've been screwing with me, right? I know they got me again. And I'm just sitting there like, okay, what am I going to do here? So I'm sitting there, not doing anything. I'm not starting my car, not trying to start my car. I'm just sitting there thinking, right? I could have been just resting. I could have been just, taking a break. I could have been just waiting for someone or whatever. I'm just sitting in my car. This spot here was open. The car pulls up, all right? And a young woman gets out. I was about 27 at the time. I was like 20, I think I was 29 at the time. I was a little bit older, right? 28 or 29. And then a woman gets out, and she's like in her early 20s, maybe 22, 23. And she's wearing a big black bow on her head. Big, obnoxious black bow. And that's a signal. That's part of their signature. The women who are involved in, with their stuff, always wore black bows, big black bows back then. Big, obnoxious. Like, no one would wear that. It's gaudy, and excessive. And anyways, so she's wearing a black bow. And then she gets out of her car, right in front of the library. And if you get out, you go to the library, you get out of your car, right, and you walk to the door, go in. Instead, she gets out of the car, walks straight over to me, right? She's standing about here, and then she says, "Oh, you're having trouble starting your car," right? And there's no way she would have known that I was trying to start my car. I wasn't trying to start my car. I wasn't turning the key. I was just sitting there thinking, what the hell am I going to do, right? So she comes over and says, "Oh, you're trying to start your car." I was like, yeah, right? Or she said, "You're having trouble starting your car." I'm like, yeah. She says, "Okay, pop the hood." And because I was taken off guard, I was like, oh, okay. So I pulled the latch, right? She reaches down, all right, And let me do this. Let me. I should have had this prepared. In fact, I'm going to add this afterwards. What the hell? I'm missing that. Okay, there it goes. Wait. Okay, engine, 1985 Toyota Celica. All right, so here's the engine compartment. All right, let's see. Is this? Yeah, okay, all right. So let me use this example here. Here's the battery. All right. So she pops open the hood, right, and immediately, without any hesitation, she reaches down. The battery cable goes off here, and it dropped down below, maybe to the about at the bottom of the battery. There was, hanging off the wire attached on the wire was a snap lock connector. All right. She immediately reaches for that without any hesitation. I didn't even know that existed. I didn't even know that was on the cable, right? How would she know, right? If it were me trying to help a car, I'd open the hood and just be confused, like where the hell is everything, right? I wouldn't even know where the battery's at. I had to look for it. She immediately goes for this cable, reaches down here, pulls up so I can see it. She pulls it up, so it's visible, and she snaps it back together, right? So where are we at here? Okay, all right. So a lock. These lock clamps have these barbs that snap into holes. You cannot. It's hard to try to get it off when you're trying to get it off. For example, I've tried, and you got to pry off one side, get the barbs out of the holes, slots for the other piece, right? And once you get this other side, you try to get the other side, and oftentimes this side snaps back in, and you're like, oh crap, and you gotta really wrestle with these, right? And then that's when you're trying to get it off. You're pressing these things. These do not come apart on their own. They're designed never to come apart on their own. And there's no way she would have known that it was unsnapped, and then she snaps it back together. Now, as soon as she snaps it back together, all power comes back. All right? All right, all power comes back, and the lights go on, but it starts to fade right away. And I'm looking down like, oh crap, right? It's like the sounds are getting softer, softer. The light is getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, right? Fast, right? So I knew there was a serious short somewhere. So somewhere a serious short has been installed in my car, and the battery's draining fast, right? So as I'm looking down at my dashboard, I'm not paying any attention to the woman, and then after a short while, I don't know, probably less than half a minute, I look up to see where she's at. She's gone. She took off, right? She's nowhere to be seen. There's no like, oh, well, good luck, or, boom, she's gone. She snapped it together and took off, right? All right. All right. So then full power begins to fade fast. So I know there's a short circuit somewhere. All right. To save the battery, I get out of my car, go to my toolbox in the back, and I take a wrench and open up the battery cable contacts on the battery, right, and take them off, right, to save anything what's left of my battery. Well, I know my battery's dead, right. Now, when I took them off, I wasn't really specifically looking for corrosion, but I don't remember seeing any corrosion, that would get me to think, oh, well, maybe I don't know. I don't remember any corrosion, but I could have overlooked it. All right. So then I had my car towed to a Toyota dealer, for them to find the short, right? And the very next day they call me. They say I can pick it up. So I go over there, right? And I go into like the lobby area, and the cashier was behind like a window. I don't know why they had it. It was like at a bank, You have to like stick stuff under like a little slot, right? She passes me the bill. I say, oh, I got to, pick up my car and I need the bill or whatever. She passes it to me. And I look at it and I see that she says to me, oh, it was just some corrosion on the battery cables. We cleaned it up and then we gave you a new battery, right? So then I look at the bill and there's a charge for labor. There's a charge for cleaning up the cables, right? But there's no charge for a new battery. And I'm thinking, man, I know this is totally a setup, right? They know that I'm pissed off. They know that I know they did it. And if they don't charge me for the battery, right, it'll increase my likelihood that I'll walk out without saying anything, right? So I know also that they're going to take that and pass that to everyone. And no one's going to ask, well, how do they know he didn't pay for the battery? But they'll pass to everyone, this is what I'm suspecting. They'll pass to everyone, he's a thief, right? He didn't pay for the battery. And no one's going to ask, well, how do you know he didn't pay for the battery, right? And then they're going to use that to discredit me again, to call me a thief, right? So I suspect that, and I say to the girl, you overlooked charging me for the battery. And then she got all nervous, and she took it back, and she's fumbling, and she's redoing it, and she's nervous, right? She doesn't know what to do really, but she gives me a new bill, and I pay for everything. I pay for the battery and all the labor and so forth, right? So, all right, and then my clutch was perfectly fine the day before, but overnight it's totally destroyed. So I get in my car and it seems to be fine, and I'm driving out of the parking lot, and I turn left onto the street, but as soon as I started to try to accelerate, my engine just would rev, right? And I'm watching, I have a tachometer and a speedometer. My tachometer would go rev up high, right? But my speedometer's not moving, which means my clutch is totally burnt out now, right? It was totally fine. I only had 45,000 miles on it, and I drive very conservative. I literally drive like an old lady, right? I don't brake very hard. I don't use my clutch very hard, I drive very, and I tend to drive kind of slow too. People get pissed at me, right? Anyways, so overnight my clutch is totally wasted, totally gone, right? And so I'm driving home, and almost like I told, I'm driving home, and I'm in third gear, doing like 25 miles an hour, so that the clutch is spinning, but at low RPMs, I'm doing maybe 11 or 1200 RPMs, right? At that, I'm milking the car home. I get it home, right? All right. So I haven't looked at this in a while. Let's see. So the next day, oh wait. All right. So this is what happened. Okay. I'm leaving stuff out here in this chart. But what happened was this, right? So I get the car home, right? Next day, I go to the auto parts store and I purchase a clutch, and I try to fix it myself, right? I don't trust these shops because it's gonna screw it again, right? And because they get networked, and I'll teach you a little bit of network theory, how easy and effectively they get people to do things. All right, so I'm going to fix it myself. I jack my car up. I get these jack stands, and I'm under there, and I get everything off. I get the drivetrain off, I get everything off up into the transmission. I get all the bolts off, but it's frozen on. It's rust frozen on solid, and I'm like shoving it, right? But there's not much room there under the car for me to put a lot of pressure on it, right? So I can't get it off. So I'm thinking, oh man, I'm screwed, right? And I thought, well, there's a gas station with a full shop, right down the street, and I saw they have a tow truck. I'll ask them if they can do it right now while I watch, right? I'll let you guys pick it up and change my clutch, right? So the guy, I get everything kind of back together. I put the drivetrain back on, and let's see, then he tows it to the shop, right? and he says, well, we got to use our own parts. I think they want to make money. They make a little bit of money from using parts from a certain store or something like that. So they got a different clutch, and which is fine, right? And they replaced it while I watched, right? All right, so my car's fine. The clutch is working fine. I drive it back home, right? And park it. And then next morning, I want to go grocery shopping, then go to the gym. So I get up, go in my car, and I put the key. First of all, the car door's cracked open. Never, let's see, how many years have I been driving at that point? Never have I left the car door cracked open. Let's see, I was 30 years old. I got my driver's license when I was 16, so I've been driving. Well, I've been driving since I was like 14, actually, 2 years before my license. My parents were out. I'd go drive. But let's say 14 years I've been driving, right? Never once have I left the car door cracked open. So the car door's cracked open. All right, fine, right? But then when I inserted the key and turned the ignition, my battery's totally dead. The brand new battery's totally dead, right? So I pound on my neighbor's door and asked for a jump, right? He was home. I get a jump, right? Get my car started and let it charge up, right? And I was so pissed at this point, right? I was so frustrated, right? Brand new battery, right? Never have I left my car door open. I know they're screwing with me. So they're linking together, all these things, right? Right? And then they're going to say, he's a false accuser. We didn't do it, Anyway, and they did. So I called my brother, right? On the landline. I didn't have a cell phone back then. This is when the hell was this? 1992, right? Cell phones had just come out, those big, handset walkie-talkie things that cost about $1,000, right? I didn't have one of those, right? So I'm calling my brother on the landline, and I complained to him, so, these guys are messing with my car. They did this, right? Right? And he's like, oh man, that sounds a little crazy, right? Right? And then about an hour later, I went to the grocery store. So only an hour after I made this call, right? And at the grocery store, people were like looking at me as I was walking past with like this evil, angry looks, right? And I went to the gym, and the same thing, right? All around me, it was passed everywhere, rapidly, within an hour, right? And the way they pass it, of course, I'm the only one not networked into the network that's about me, but I can tell the way it was passed is I was a vicious, false accusing liar, right? Blaming other people for my own problems that, everyone has, right? Or something like that, right? So people hated me, right? Not only are they going to hate me, who's going to believe me, right? And so, yeah, that's an ad hominem. Plus, it got people to hate me. All right, that was a good benefit, right? All right, so, yeah, I finally had enough. I called my brother, and then that call was passed everywhere, right? All right. Now, I know this sounds crazy, and people are not going to put it all together. They're going to say, oh, yeah, that's crazy. You're crazy, right? But let's look at I know people don't remember the facts now. They don't put it all together, right? And let's look at the probabilities, right? So I say, what's the probability you get in your car, drive someplace, and your car's perfectly fine, then an hour later it's totally dead, all right? All right, I say 1 in 100. Chances are 1 in 100. So what that means is, when you get in your car, you drive someplace, you get out, you get back in, you drive again, right? So that's 50 times you drive your car, basically. 1 in 100 is 50. Every 50 times you drive your car, and let's say you drive your car every day, right? That's only 2 months of using your car. But usually people drive more than one place a day. So let's say this is about a month's use of a car. If this happens every month, you have your car that goes totally dead for no reason, right? That's a pretty crappy car. That car company, if their cars are all like that, it's not staying in business, right? That's not happening. So this is very generous. 1 in every 50 times you drive your car, right? It goes totally dead for no reason after 1 hour, right? I'd say that's generous. I'd say that's fair, right? Then after I start my car and it's totally dead, a woman pulls up in a car, 1 car away, which she can't even see me. So this car is in between, right? Let's see here. This car is in between. That's her car. This is my car. How is she even seeing me? How is she even noticing me? Right? I'm sitting here just thinking like, oh crap, what am I going to do? Right? She gets out of her car. Instead of going to the library, she walks straight over without any hesitation and says to me, oh, you having trouble starting your car? Well, first of all, why would she even see me? Second of all, why would she even bother to come over, you know? And third, why would she know I'm having trouble starting my car when I'm not even trying to start my car? Right? It's impossible. But let's say 1 in 1,000, right? Every 1,000 times you're sitting in your car, someone comes up to you and says, for no reason, says, oh, you're having trouble starting your car. Yeah, like that happens. All right. So this is very fair. 1 in 1,000. All right. There's no way this is going to happen. No way she's going to get out of a car, and if she really wanted to go to the library, she walks straight in. But instead, she walks over here. How could she see me? Stops here, says, "Oh, you're having trouble starting your car." Right? All right, 1 in 1,000. That's like, to me, that's really like never is going to happen. Right? And then she says, "Pop your hood." You know, some young 22, 3-year-old girl. Oh, pop your hood. I'm an expert auto mechanic. Right? So she lifts the hood without hesitation and reaches directly, without any hesitation, reaches for the lock clip on the battery cable, which is about a foot below the top of the battery. Now, how is she going to even know where my battery's at without looking? How is she going to even know that lock clip is there? I didn't even know that was there. It's my car, right? She goes straight for it, pulls it up so I can visibly see it, and snaps it together, right? And all power comes back immediately, right? So that lock clip was separated, right? How is she going to know that, right? That's like impossible. I'm going to say 1 in a million, easily 1 in a million. There's no way she would have known that. Then what are the chances lock clips come apart? I say 1 in a million. You know, there's a million cars out there, right? On the U.S. streets, right? How many times out of those millions of cars, right, do lock clips come apart on their own? They never do. Never do they come apart. They're designed never to come apart. But let's say 1 in a million, just to be fair. All right? All right? You don't design a lock clip that comes apart, or you change the damn design. All right. So then full power returns, but it fades fast so that I know there's a big short circuit, right? Somewhere, right? I'm not even going to measure the chances for this short circuit. All right? There's a short circuit somewhere. I skip that. What are the chances you're going to have a short circuit, right? But what I'll do is I'll talk about this girl, right? The cashier. She seemed young too, maybe like in her mid-20s, right? All right. Now, what are the chances that she's going to leave the battery off the receipt there, right, and not charge before? I say 1 in 50, right? So 1 in every 50 times, let's say a grocery store. 1 in every 50 times the cashier screws up and leaves something big off, the biggest item, right? She leaves it off, right? Well, she does that 1 in 50 times, right? If a person does that 1 in 50 times, they're going to get fired, right? But let's say that's fair, 1 in 50 times. Every 50 times she has a customer, she screws up the bill. So I'm going to say that's fair, right? That's more than fair. That's more than generous, right? All these are more than generous. Now the clutch was perfectly fine the day before. Overnight, the clutch gets completely destroyed, right? These things don't get destroyed overnight, right? I've driven 45,000 miles in this car. That's not a lot, right? I baby the clutch. The clutch is perfectly fine. Overnight, it's totally destroyed, so it's not catching barely. It's slipping like crazy. And I can only do 25 miles an hour home in third gear, milking that clutch. All right? So I'm going to say 1 in 10 million times, your clutch goes from perfectly fine overnight to totally destroyed. That never happens. That's impossible. 1 in 10 million is easily generous. So the next day, I go to my car, and the battery's completely dead because the car door's cracked open. Never in 14 years of driving up to that point have I done this. So let's say I drove my car once a day, which means twice, driving someplace and, driving back, right? right? And over 14 years, that's 10,220 times getting into my car, and getting out of my car, and closing the door, right? All right. Okay. So 1 in 10,220. So I did it once, right? So that's fair, right? Assuming I drive my car once a day. And a lot of times you drive your car more than once a day. You run errands, right? You go here and there, all right? All right. And sometimes you don't drive your car all day. But I'm saying that's fair. It all evens out. Now, I finally have enough, and I call my brother on my home phone to vent my frustration. Now, what are the chances the CIA, FBI have tapped my phone? All right. Okay. I'm sure there's wiretaps. They get some judge to sign off on a wiretap here and there, whatever, right? But I'm saying I'm gonna guess 1 in 100,000 population. They're not tapping everyone, right? So let's say 1 in 100,000 people their phones are tapped. Now mine's been tapped for 30 years, right? Who in this world has the phone tap? Well, I'm sure there's people who have the phone taps for 30 years, right? But mine is tapped for 30 years, right? Which is rare. But I'm saying, out of people who are tapped, only, I'm guessing, 1 in 100,000, right? I think that's fair. Okay. Have their phones tapped. All right. And that call's recorded when I'm not. Oh, okay. Also, my phone is tapped and I'm not suspected of anything. All right, as opposed to a judge authorizing a wiretap for a suspected criminal. Right. I'm not a criminal. I've broken no law. Right. How many people who have broken no law, who are not suspected anything, have their phones tapped? Right. I'm saying 1 in 100,000. That's more than fair. That's way more than fair when you add in, not suspected of anything, not breaking any law. Right. And then, how many people, right, have their private phone calls in their home, right, on a private phone line, passed everywhere, right, all around in this huge network? Who's that done to? No one in the United States except for me, right? So if the population of the United States is over 300 million now, right, but I estimated 300 million. It's probably like 350 million, right? This is fair. I'm the only person in the United States who this happens to, right? Okay. Every damn thing I do or say is recorded and passed everywhere, right? All right. So I think all these are more than fair. These probabilities. Now, for these to all occur, simultaneously like they did, you multiply these probabilities together, right? Now, if I multiply together, I get this number here. This is the number you get when you multiply these all together. This is the chances of winning the lottery, mega ball. If you look it up, they cite anyways, 1 in 292 million. This is the chances of these all happening. So what that means is, right, the chances of all these happening simultaneously, you'd have to win the lottery this many times. This is the chance of winning the lottery. This is the amount of times you have to win the lottery to equal these chances, right? This is impossible. This is crazy, right? I don't know if people understand these numbers, but this is just not going to happen naturally. For all these to occur, right? Boom, 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 down the line, right? You have to win the lottery this many times, right? So what that says is there's no way that this is natural. This is definitely man-made. All this stuff is definitely man-made. Now, I know people are going to be like, well, I don't even remember what's done. It's all fuzzy, right? What do you mean, right? And they say, yeah, he's crazy. He's a crazy man. See how easily it's done? And what they did this time was they got everyone to believe that I was a vicious, false accusing liar, right? And it pissed people off. People are just like almost violently mad at me, right? All right, so that's the first time they got me. Well, no, the first example I give you. My second example, right? That's actually the second time they strung together a series of them. I'll give you another example. All right, so what I want to do next is I want to give you an example that happened at a Midas muffler shop. I was going to get my brakes changed. This is on my Ford truck. And, okay, what do we got here? Okay, this involved a short circuit. So they installed a short circuit in my car. Now remember, they did a short circuit here. Right? I knew it's a short circuit, right? And the CIA, FBI have a tendency to do the same exact thing again, right? One, because they know you're going to recognize it, right? So the CIA, FBI like to repeat similar damages, right? Because I'll immediately recognize it and I'll know it's them. I'll attribute it to them, right? And two, they know that if they get me in the exact same way, it's a surefire way to get me all riled up, to get me pissed off. And it's more likely that this anger is more likely to induce me to complain, say something, which they intend to capture on tape and then spin and then pass that everywhere as an attack upon my credibility, right? And to mock and laugh and to, whatever examples I said, to say crazy, to say, imagining things, to say I'm paranoid, to say that I'm a false accusing liar, that I'm overanalyzing, or whatever lie they want to pass. Right? All right. So this game was played in 2008, about March or April. I'm kind of remembering about March or April. I know it was cold still. It was chilly out. Right? I'm kind of spaced. Anyways, so at this time they were torturing the hell out of me. Although I didn't know they were torturing the hell out of me at that time. And I say here, people not appreciate what an endless and unrelenting nightmare it was. This was truly a nightmare. Oh my God, it was bad. I was decomposing and breaking down while alive, and I had no idea. I thought it was RSD, which is reflex sympathetic dystrophy, right? But it turns out, I found out that they were pumping toxic mold spores into the air, right? And the one they were using is the one that is I call it super homicidal, and it's very low allergenic. It doesn't cause you to sneeze. I mean, it causes your eyes to itch and water, and burn a little bit, right? But I thought that was due to the RSD, right? It made my, anyways, okay, let's see here. All right, so the FBI, CIA were decomposing me while alive with high concentrations of toxic mold, and I was terribly sick and suffering, and I thought it was all due to a condition called reflex sympathetic dystrophy, right? Which is a disease in which the sympathetic nervous system is running wild and out of control, right? Causing you to jack out adrenaline on 24/7, high amounts of it, which has very damaging effects, long term. I don't want to get into all the details, the specific physiology of it, right? But it starts breaking you down, right? Plus, the toxic mold itself is breaking you down. Toxic mold is meant to be a decomposer. Mold, I don't know if you learned from biology that there were three main, groups. You have producers, which are like plants that take energy from the sun and so forth, right? And build, organic material, right? And then you have consumers, which eat plants or other animals, right? We're consumers, right? And then you have decomposers that break dead things down, right? Well, I'm not a dead thing yet, but they're breaking me down, right? And so mold does that by releasing what are called superoxidizing molecules, which basically strip electrons away from anything. And in so doing, it starts breaking down molecules, right? And so I'm getting damage from that. Plus, I'm getting damage from the adrenaline because my body's like reacting in panic to being exposed to this mold, right? And I did in fact have RSD, but it was secondary to the toxic mold. So all these doctors, I'm going to all these doctors desperately trying to get help, right? And they're giving me umpteen diagnoses. Everyone's giving me a different diagnosis. They don't really know what's going on, right? And I guess I can't blame them because who would expect toxic mold in your place, right? But I'm the only one who correctly diagnosed it, the RSD syndromes, right? Because of course I have all day. I'm like, everything matches up. Every damn, I mean, for example, some people say you have Raynaud's, right? Which is arterial spasms of the smooth muscles that surround our arteries, not arterioles, arteries, right? And now I'd have like one symptom that matches it, or like two symptoms. For RSD, there's about like 24 symptoms, and they all match, right? So I knew it was RSD, right? But the RSD, which is the uncontrolled sympathetic nervous discharge, releasing adrenaline, was secondary to exposure to toxic mold, which caused my body to essentially, go into emergency crisis, and that caused the out of control release of adrenaline. All right. Okay. And I didn't suspect toxic mold at all at the time because I was convinced it was due to neural damage. Back in November 2007, I saw a vascular surgeon. I was having trouble with a cold foot, right? And I saw a vascular surgeon, and he felt my foot and instantaneously said, I told him, listen, this only happens when especially when I rub behind my knee, right? So I think it's neurological, but he feels my foot. He's not even listening to me. And he admits me into the hospital, and he thinks I have a blood clot, right? My foot is so cold, right? So, but he gives me a battery of tests. He says, we'll check you out, right? So I get an echocardiogram, and they come back, and they say, my ejection fraction is 65. It's good, right? Anyway, so what he did was he set me on a table which had X-ray or CT scan. Well, I guess it was X-ray over it, right? And he inserted a catheter. It's called a angiogram. He inserted a catheter in my right. I guess it's I can't remember now. Celiac artery, right? I can't remember. It's one that's in your pelvis. I think that's celiac. Let me take a look here. Anyways, it's not that important. And then that crossed over from my right side to my left side, and then it went down my femoral artery, and and then that went down to the popliteal artery behind my knee. What the hell? Anyways, it's not important. So, and then he had to go through the popliteal artery behind my knee, which I had gotten an MRI, and I was told that it was displaced in kind of a loop because I had torn a muscle. My medial gastrocnemius, or calf muscle, was really split into two muscle strands, and I had a formation called popliteal artery entrapment type 3, right? What's called an accessory slip of muscle wrapped around the wrong side of the popliteal artery. It's a natural formation that some people have, right? And that tore and went up my leg, right? And that was causing irritation, which would activate the sympathetic reaction, causing the alpha receptors in my lower leg to constrict, cutting off circulation, making my foot cold, and then get swollen. Lower leg would get swollen and all that stuff, right? So that was the cause, and then I was convinced that it was when I got home that all this crazy stuff, all my body breakdown started to occur. So I spent 3 days in the hospital, right? And when I came home, that's when everything went haywire. It went insane, right? The first thing I noticed, um, so actually it was all this. When it turned out, it was all this toxic mold that was being done. But because the CIA, FBI timed this to start with my coming home, I naturally thought it was due to the procedure I got. I thought the procedure damaged the popliteal artery behind behind my knee, and now I had permanent RSD due to that. And I did have all the symptoms of RSD, but like I said, it was due to the toxic mold, right? So prior to this, I was perfectly healthy and very athletic. Even at 45 years old, I could run very fast. I could run up hills like insanely fast. I could run up hills almost as fast as I can run in the flats, and I was fast, right? I was still super strong. I got really strong at about 25, right? And that's when I started getting really smart too. So I could run fast. I could rollerblade long and fast. I used to lift weights for 2 hours and go for about a 20 or 30 mile rollerblade, right? I could ski like no one else at that time. I'd rip crazy, hard, radical turns. And I was very athletic. I was very coordinated. So I was very athletic. I was in very good shape. And then in very short order, I just broke down. Right. So the first thing I noticed when I got back home, right, I noticed right away my fingertips were bright dark red. They never were, and this still happens when they whack me with toxic mold. One of the things that happens is my fingertips turn bright dark red, and then my fingers, the skin of my finger palm side, shrivel and get all wrinkled, and then my joints get swollen and sore, right? But back then they just turned bright dark red, and I was like, what the hell's going on? I've never seen this before. It's normal flesh color, right? And then in just a few days, I was breaking down bad. I was having constant chest pain. This is like 3 days afterward. When I tried to climb the stairs in my apartment, my condo complex, it's on a hill, right? And there's different levels, so there's a good amount of stairs. But I had trouble climbing it, and I was like in super shape. I get shortness of breath. My intestines started hurting constantly. I had intestinal pain constantly. Just my guts were hurting. Then my kidneys started hurting. Then my liver would get all seized up, right, and hurt. And my abdomen would get all distended, like I had cirrhosis, which is due to the back pressure. It has to do with all the what do you call it? The mesenteric arteries? No, the hepatic portal system stuff. Going into your liver from your intestines. And I couldn't sleep. Then my lower legs started tearing. My lower legs got so bad I had to wear these boots, these brace boots. They're like plastic with Velcro, and they keep your lower legs from moving, right? Your ankle from moving, right? While using crutches, so I had leg braces on both legs. They're both tearing down, right? I had to use crutches. And then what happened was my leg had gotten so bad, I would feel it tearing when pressing on the clutch on my car, right? Which isn't much pressure, right? I mean, it's not hard to press the damn clutch pedal down, right? So just from that, my left leg would be tearing, right? So then I had to start using my right leg on the clutch pedal on the left side, right? While I pressed the gas pedal down with a 2x2 stick, and I screwed a flat board to the bottom of this stick, right? And so that's how I press the gas pedal, with this stick, right? And then I have to shift. So I'd have to drop the stick, shift gears as I press down. It was pretty complicated, right? And then my forearms became so weak eventually that I had trouble using the crutches. I could barely use crutches. I was really going downhill bad. And then all my mucosal tissue, especially in my mouth and nose, were all inflamed and sore. My eyes were constantly irritated. My hair was thinning bad, and my skin was all messed up. I was breaking down more and more, and I was suffering pretty bad, right? And I just lay in bed, just like what the hell's going on? And looking back, I mean, it didn't happen as fast as this, but there's a movie called Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, in which they're looking for the cup, the Holy Grail, whatever, and they find it, and then this guy drinks from the wrong cup, and he starts breaking down fast. I mean, I felt that was happening to me. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but I kind of felt it, like, what is going on? I'm breaking down, And it's, when you're very healthy all your life and very athletic, this is pretty disturbing. So now, while I was suffering like this, it was being passed in social reality that I was faking. Everyone would be like, you're faking, they like laugh at me and stuff like that. He's faking, right? And I'm suffering, right? But that's like a CIA thing. They want you to get you jacked up, right? So even doctors were exposed to social reality, and two doctors, one in particular was really bad. God, I can still remember this guy. Here I am suffering. I'm in bad shape, right? And at one point I had, I can't remember how I got it, but I had a benzodiazepine. I'm not sure which one. I later was prescribed clonazepam, which was like a long-acting one, which is great. But it helped a lot in reducing the symptoms, because with the basically the RSD, you have your sympathetic nervous system just jacking out of control, right? So benzodiazepines are basically they help hyperpolarize. Yeah, I think they open up benzodiazepines. I think open up chloride channels. Anyways, so they hyperpolarize the nerves, making it harder for them to fire, because you got to depolarize nerves to get them to fire to reach what's called the threshold potential, the action potential, where then it kicks off and opens up all these other sodium channels and so forth. Anyways, so yeah, the benzo work great, and so I just go to this guy and can you help me out here, right? And just the benzodiazepine has worked well in the past, right? And he's like, you're faking, right? And he's like, and he was just like mean, and he almost just get the hell out of here, right? So I mean, that's what I was getting. All right, I had all the symptoms of RSD, and therefore I was fully persuaded that the angiogram procedure had damaged the sympathetic nerve on the popliteal artery behind my right knee, or somewhere along that, and it just made it worse, made things go out of control. When all the while the CIA, FBI timed the whack-a-mole, right, with my getting back from that procedure. So right when I got back, that's when they started it, and therefore I naturally attributed my breakdown to that procedure, right? So I was going to hospitals looking for help. Just about every doctor I saw had some different diagnoses. Some doctors thought I was faking it. I told you about this guy, right? I was out of my mind, not able to sleep, breaking down, decomposing, getting worse and worse progressively, right? And that's kind of a disturbing, feeling, right? I had no idea how bad it would get, and I had no idea when it would end, and it was just getting worse and worse. So after 2 years of continuous breakdown, with no end in sight, right? No light at the end of the tunnel, right? Then I figured, well, there's no point. This is not a life. Living, just laying in my bed, right? Breaking down, suffering, right? I couldn't see myself doing that for the rest of my life. And I figured this is going to go on for the rest of my life, right? So I tried to commit suicide 3 times, right? And I wasn't too successful, obviously, right? The third time I came very close, right? And I woke up in the hospital 3 days later, and they had all these tubes running in me, running out of me, and I had a catheter shoved up my urethra, and they're just draining me as they're pumping fluid in. They're just like, anyways. So now I stay here. I have all the medical tests to prove definite damage, right? Well, when I was admitted to the hospital to get the angiogram back in November 2007, I had an echocardiogram done, and my ejection fraction was 65%, which is consistent with a well-conditioned athlete. Within a year, my ejection fraction fell to 42%, and I was diagnosed with borderline heart failure, right? That doesn't happen on its own, right? Usually you get this massive drop when you have a heart attack. You have loss of blood, which means loss of oxygen to tissue, and the tissue starts dying, it gets necrotic, and then you have a whole sequela of things getting worse and worse, and you start building up heart failure, right? Building up a mass of necrotic tissue and so forth, right? Thicker walls and all that stuff, right? But I didn't have a heart attack. There's no explanation for it. Such a radical drop. I also failed the cardiac stress test. All right, that's when they discovered a 42%. Right, they gave me a CT scan and X-ray at this time. Right, and they diagnosed me with both COPD and something called atelectasis, which COPD is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Atelectasis is when the tiny air sacs that make up your lungs. You have millions and millions of these sacs, right? Well, they're broken down. The walls are broken down, so you have one big floppy, like grocery bag for a lung, right? And you lose a lot of the surface area, right? So your lungs don't work very well. They're very less efficient. And I still have shortness of breath because of that. My lungs are messed up. My lower legs continue to deteriorate until my left gastrocnemius totally tore and is gone now. I don't have a left calf muscle. I have only the soleus muscle below, which is still working. My painful intestines led to constant diarrhea. I had constant diarrhea, right? So I went in to get checked, and they set up a colonoscopy, and then I was diagnosed with inflammatory colitis caused by ischemia. Ischemia is lack of blood flow. Well, this makes sense because when you have raging adrenaline, it hits the alpha-1 and alpha-2 receptors on your intestines and other organs, right? Which causes smooth muscle to undergo vasoconstriction, which constricts it, right? Cutting off blood flow, right? And a prolonged lack of blood causes things to start dying, basically, getting sick, right? And so my intestines were all inflamed and unhealthy. And that caused that also caused the intestinal pain, but it also caused inflammatory colitis, and my intestines weren't working well, and I had constant diarrhea. All right, that was great. All right, they prescribed me Asacol, and Asacol worked pretty well. It was pretty good stuff, right? Very expensive drug, right? Tack that on to the CIA bill. Yeah, great. The angina got so bad, I had to take. I had angina. I had chest pain, right? I had to start taking aspirin, and the aspirin helped with that, right? So I had resting angina, not even exercising, just sitting there, chest pain, right? So the toxic mold had messed up my coronary artery so bad that I was having heart oxygenation problems. Right, I developed diabetes and hyperlipidemia. Right, my lipids were all whacked out. Blood sugar was way high. Right, my blood pressure was at first raging high for a while, like in the 160s. Right, then it plummeted. It was like to the 90s. Right, so I don't know what the hell happened there. It was it's probably due to like the heart failure stuff. My heart's all messed up. I've recovered since then. My blood pressure. With high blood pressure medication, it's pretty good now. It's like in the 120s, which is right on target. So I was seeing all sorts of doctors, and none could help. I self-diagnosed myself with RSD, and I was the only one who was correct. And I got only one doctor to agree with me, a local guy who helped me out there. So he prescribed me the Mayo Clinic drug regimen for RSD, and it worked like a charm. Boy, that day I was feeling good, right? However, the problem was I would get accommodated. What do you call it? I forget the term for it. But I would get accommodated to the drugs, and there's many mechanisms whereby this can happen, whether you increase elimination rate, you increase the number of enzymes, or you decrease the enzymes that break it down, or you decrease the number of receptors, whatever, right? So these stopped working, and I would have to repeatedly increase dosage, right? And then it would start working again. But it would fade again after a few months, right? So they kept jacking up the dosage until the doctor said, well, we can't do this anymore. You're at the limit. And especially they were worried about the alpha receptor blocker, right? So the Mayo Clinic drug regimen was 4 drugs, and I can't remember the 4th drug. One was an alpha receptor blocker. One was a tricyclic antidepressant, which actually helped me sleep well too, right? One was benzodiazepine, which was clonazepam, which was great. Clonazepam is just great stuff. Lasts a long time, long half-life, like 12 hours or something like that, right? Okay. Anyways, I can't remember the fourth, but the alpha blocker would open up the blood vessels, right, that were being shut down by the alpha 1, alpha 2 adrenergic receptors, right? All right. So then that was my situation. And then, like I said, in March, April, my brakes started. I'm trying to see doctors with my car, right? And having trouble, driving because my left leg is all messed up, but I'm still making it with the right leg on the clutch and stick on the gas pedal, right? And however, my brakes started scraping, right? So I got to go take it in, right? And normally I replace my own brake pads, right? It's real easy to do, right? I used to be able to do it very quick, and but I was too sick and broken down to do that. So I was like, I'll take it into a shop. So I called around, and the best deal I got was like a $99 special just to replace the brake pads. It was a Midas muffler shop in Antioch. I can't remember the road it was on. It was like the main road that runs through the town. I can't remember. I think it was 173. Anyways, okay. So I took it in there. Now at this point, the CIA, FBI had played a couple of dirty games with me, networking to auto repair shops, just like I told you that Toyota dealership, right? They network so fast, and they work people so fast and effectively. People have no idea they're being manipulated, right? I'll explain how these are done, right? For example, the Fort Collins one at the library I told you about, how they messed the bill up and then they destroyed my clutch. But I was desperately sick and out of my mind, right? With way too much adrenaline and little sleep, right? So I took my car in about noon the next day, right? They told me it would be a little while, right? But that turned out to be 6 hours. I waited there 6 hours, right? And the worker manager guy, he was the guy in charge there. He told me that at the end of the day, well, sorry, but we couldn't get to your car, right? However, tell you what, I'll do you a favor. Leave the car here. I could have easily drove it home, right? But he told me, well, leave the car here, right? And we'll drive you home, and we'll pick you up tomorrow. And you know what? I think he offered. They don't do this, I'm sure. They don't normally do this for people, right? But I'm sure he offered that to encourage me to leave the car there, and I did, right? I was just so out of my mind, right? So he offers me a ride home, and I lived over 10 miles away, so he drives me home. He has one of the guys drive me home. Next day, he gives me a call. Next day, he gives me a call, and he sends a guy to pick me up. He picks me up, drives me in, right? And then he says, there was more damage. We had to replace the rotors. We had to do this or that, and it ended up costing, I think it was over $300, like $350 or something like that. Can't remember exactly, but it was over $350 or $300, right? And I was too sick to argue with him. I said, okay, fine, I'll just pay it, right? And then I drove the home, no problem, right? Next day, I went to my car to start up. It was totally dead, just like it was up here. Totally dead, no lights, no sounds, nothing, right? Right? And I'm thinking, okay, they got me again, right? So they got me before. I know they got me again, right? This doesn't happen. And I figured they put a short somewhere. And I'm so sick, right? I think, oh God, and I still need to try to go to doctors. I'm looking for them for help, and they can't help me. No one's helping me. They can't figure out jack. But again, I can't blame them because who'd expect toxic mold? So let's see where I'm at here. All right. So what happened was, I had plenty of cash, and I said, I'll just buy a new car because I did need a new car anyways because my left leg was so bad I couldn't use the clutch, and that was getting problematic. So I figured, well, I'll just get an automatic, right? So I went and bought a new car, 2008. This was 2008, and that's a car I have today still. So I said, yeah, I want an automatic because my left leg was shredded, right? My right leg was getting bad too. Um, Getting bad to the point where I was having trouble using that to use my clutch. So I left my truck just parked there in the parking lot, right? A few months later, my brother came to visit with his family, and while he was here, it was now August. I kind of remember it was shortly before they went back to school. It's like the last chance to get a vacation during the summer, and they came to visit the cousins who lived nearby in Buffalo Grove. I lived in Fox Lake, and they came by and visited me. And so I asked my brother to take a look for the short. I said, I know there's a short somewhere. He goes under my truck, and within less than a minute comes up and says, someone's trying to make some money here. I'm like, what? What are you talking about, right? Hey, someone intentionally put a short in the wire that powers your starter motor, right? That shorted out your car. See for yourself. So I'm very sick, but I climb under the car and take a look, and this is what I saw. All right? This is the way it should have looked. All right, here's a starter motor. Here's a wire coming out. Now, this wire is a very thick wire. Because think about it. All right? The electrical system in the car is not very high voltage. It's only 12 volts, right? And the starter motor has to drive the entire motor, plus all the belts and wheels and pumps and generators and compressors, whatever is attached to it. Like the power steering pump, the coolant pump, and the air conditioning thing, right? Well, this and that, right? All right, so that's going to take a lot of amperage, right? And what that means is, at low voltage, that's going to require a lot of current, right? So therefore, to handle that current, you need a thick wire. And that wire is about as thick as a coat hanger. It's thick and stiff, right? That doesn't bend on its own, right? Coat hangers don't bend on their own. You hang a heavy jacket on the coat hanger, it doesn't bend, right? So this is what I saw. The wire was bent in a double loop like this, bent forward and back, and this part of the wire had the insulation scraped off. And that was pressed in contact with my starter motor, and that's what shorted out my battery, my whole system, right? All right. So my brother said that. I was like, okay, great. So I said, he said, I'll go fix it. He went in his car. He had some electrical tape, and he wrapped it around and did a temporary fix. And later on, I went down and I packed silicone adhesive around it, or silicone caulk around it. Anyways, yeah. So how does this happen? This doesn't happen. This wire doesn't get bent like this on its own. Zero chance. Thick as a coat hanger. That doesn't bend like this on its own. That insulation doesn't scrape off on its own. Doesn't get cut off on its own. Right? Even if it's in contact, rubbing against it, which it shouldn't be, but even if it's in contact, that doesn't scrape off in a long cut like that. All right, so this is 100% man-made, right? All right, so add it up. Impossible natural bending of a coat hanger wire. Coat hanger, thick and strong wire, that's not going to happen. Impossible cutting away the plastic insulation, that's not going to happen. The manager making me wait all day long, then offering me free rides, right? And then telling me to leave the truck over there overnight. I could have just drove home, right? And brought it back the next day, right? And then the next day after that, after I pick it up to the truck, I drive home okay. They must have put the short right in before they got there, right? And then I drive the next day, it's dead. Then a few months later, my brother visits, and he finds that, right? This is not natural. Don't tell me this is natural. People, I know people are going to come up like, well, that could happen. I've heard of people, this happened. No way, this is not going to happen naturally, right? So, but what they'll do is, again, I didn't say a word about this because I knew, they're the same old game. They do this to induce you to say something, to complain, and then they immediately take your complaint and they twist it, and they get everyone to believe that you're a false accusing liar, right? Or that you're crazy. It destroys your credibility. And that's all they need. Then people won't believe you. It doesn't matter how factual, how super intelligent your analysis is. People won't remember it anyways. Chances are they won't follow it. They'll just say, oh, it's crazy. They'll dismiss it. Okay, so what do I say here? So because I was sick and desperate, in need of a car to see the doctors, this CIA FBI game cost the price of a new car. Well, that's my choice, you could say. It was my decision, but I didn't have to buy that new car if eventually, because my legs got so bad, maybe I would have had to buy a new car anyways. But all right, that was due to the toxic mold that the CIA was whacking me with. You might say, even though you were so sick, you could have taken it into a shop. Oh yeah, once I had the short, I didn't have to leave the car there. I could have taken it into the shop. You had it towed in, right? What do you think is going to happen? They're going to network to those guys too and mess up my car more, right? They always do that, right? That's exactly, people are going to say, oh, the CIA can't network and manipulate people, get them to do things. No, they do it so easily, right? That's what they're trained to do, right? They're spies. They're trained to manipulate people, use people, get information from people, get people to do things for them, right? And I'll show you how easy it is once you know a little bit of knowledge. So the average person will say, well, you can't fool me, you can't manipulate me, network me, I'm too smart for that, right? I've seen people flip in 10, 15 minutes. That's all it takes. From being cordial with you, nice to you, friendly, right? They'll know you from Jack, so, they're just whatever, right? To hating you, mocking you, willing to do nasty things to you. Okay, well, what do I say here? All right, now I'm going to give you a brief introduction to network theory. All right, I don't have time here to explain all of network theory, right? I'll just give you a sample of some of the things that they do, right, to get people to do things for them. Right, so here's an introduction to network theory. I'm not going to go into all the details here, right? Here's some methods of manipulating people, right? Down to here, I give like 10 methods, right? And, when I get to the bottom of the list, you're not going to remember any of it, I'm sure. That's just the way it works. Right? You'd have to take this and study it, and I know no one's going to study it. So you can see how easy this is going to work. They want to impress you at first, establish authority, establish, influence over you with their authority, right? So first thing they do is they show you their badge, their credentials, right? And you're like, oh shit, FBI, whatever, right? Then they go in numbers. They don't go alone, right? They go in at least 2, and I've seen 3 agents, right? They go together, right? And in increased numbers, you have increased influence. Then, in all cases, they're usually like tall, good-looking, well-dressed, always well-dressed. They're slick and smooth, but firm, right? All right, so that's the first thing. To impress you, right? To establish all like a leadership, impressive thing, right? And then what they do, next thing they do is they create anger against the target. They create a hate against the target. They show him to be a heinous villain, right? So if they want to get people to do something bad to me, right, one of the things they do is they get people to hate me, right? Just really gut level hate, right? So they'll say, oh, he's a predator, he's a pedophile, he preys on little kids, right? Or they'll say, he preys on the elderly who can't help themselves, right? He scams them out of their life savings with these, whatever scams, right? Or they'll say he's a criminal somehow, preying upon, whatever. He does credit card fraud or something, whatever. They'll come up with something to get me hated. Or they'll say that he's a communist, or he's anti-American, or he's a facilitator of terrorists, right? Or enabler of terrorists, right? Or he's a false accusing liar, blaming others for his troubles. They'll get people pissed off at you. They'll tell them something, And these guys are going to be unsuspecting. It's FBI. Why are you going to down him, right? Oh, you're lying. You can be bowled away by first being impressed by them, and then you're going to hear this and you're going to believe it. And people think, no, they do all the time. They take what they hear. All right? Then they make the target into a threat some way. He's a threat to your safety. He's a threat to public safety. He's a threat to national security. He's a threat to your livelihood or job. They do that with bosses and coworkers, right? A threat to your reputation, right? They network to bosses and coworkers, right? And that's one of the things they do, right? Create a just cause. Provide some positive purpose for what you're doing. We're trying to get a dangerous predator off the streets, right? And this is going to be, to try to provoke them into doing something, whatever, right? This is going to help, right? This is for national security and for the safety of the American people, whatever, okay? I've seen people believing that I was a threat to the economy, right? Anyways, they create trust, friendship, establish cordial relations, and the bond of friendship, right? So they're good at, building connections, building, ties, building, mutual respect, right? Getting a good feeling, like, they feel good about, having contact with them. You make them feel good about themselves, right? And that increases the chance they're going to do something for you. Create debt, give them something. So they often do this. It's just like bribing a person. For example, people have been turned for bribes, right? I mean, this has happened throughout the ages. People being bribed, whatever, right? But you promise them something. From what I've seen, people have been promised help with their careers, right? I've seen so many people, these kids, right, who try to get it, going way out of the way, crazy things. When I was in college, for example, when I was in grad school, people I didn't know, kids I didn't know, try to, come up to me and be friends with me, right? And from, digging a little bit, I get that they're trying to get into like the FBI or CIA. They're trying to get accepted, right? They're trying to get a foot in the door. So they'll try to do something. They'll promise something, right? Sometimes it's a gift, right? And it's attuned to what people desire. One person I know who was living on disability, didn't have much money, but he really liked computers. Get him a brand new computer, right? Oftentimes I've seen this. All expenses paid, free vacations, right, for the entire family, right? Spies often do things for sex, often offer sex or money, right? They can offer asylum or something like that, right? They can offer something to get them to do something. Negative, that's on the positive side, but on the negative side, what's often done is they can arrest them on something. So they find out something. Maybe they dig into this person's background. They found that they cheated on their taxes, let's say. They do an audit. They find that they cheated on his taxes, and they use that as a threat. Imprisonment or big fines, whatever, right? Or do this. And that's often done by cops. Cops will arrest one guy, right? It's involved in a major, let's say, crime operation, but they want to get the head honcho. So they get to turn state's evidence or whatever, and they'll offer him immunity or they offer him a reduced sentence or whatever, right? Execution of spies. For example, well, here's one, right? During World War II, during Operation Fortitude, which was the deception to do D-Day, right? In Britain, they captured a bunch of spies, German spies, and they threatened them with execution unless they passed false information to the Germans, and they did. That was one part of Operation Fortitude, right, which got the Germans to believe that the landings were going to be in Calais and in Norway, as opposed to Normandy. Suckered them into a sex tape, right? That's another negative, right? You have some girl, pick up a married guy, right? And the guy thinks he's got it lucky, right? He hits the jackpot there, right? And she takes him to the room and has sex, but there's cameras set up, right? And then they think something like that, right? And they threaten to send one to the wife or whatever. Another method is called foot in the door. Get them to give something back in return, right? So this principle is based upon you give them something to create a debt, And then you get them to give you something back that's trivial, that's easy, that's no sweat off your brow, right? And you're like, okay, yeah, right? But the thing about it is, psychologically somehow, I'm not sure the principle, right? But once you give them something back that increases the likelihood you'll do something else for them, not trivial, more, and that's called foot in the door. Use aggressive humor. So this is one that's used to control the conscience, right? Oftentimes, if you're going to do some harm to a person, right, what you want to do is you want to attack the target person with aggressive jokes, mocking jokes, ridiculing jokes, especially dehumanizing jokes. Make him out to be a fool, make him out to be, whatever, right? But something dehumanizing. Now, if you can do that, right, if you can attack them with humor, that increases the likelihood these people will do something against that person. All right, then exploit, make it into a practical joke, right? If you then joke about the thing that you want them to do, like it's just a practical joke, that minimizes the consequence. Let's say it's my brakes or my clutch or something like that, right? That may cost me, $100, a few $100, right? And they may be like, well, I don't know, right? I don't know if I want to do that, right? Well, first of all, you get them all pissed off that they want to do it, right? You do all these other things, right? That's a good reason for it. But then, if there's still some resistance, then you make it into a practical joke. It's just a joke, it's no big deal, right? You laugh about it, right? If they can laugh about it, it mitigates the perception of harm, right? And so these are all methods. And the last one is they can exploit you, get you to do things because they draw you in, make you feel good, make you feel like you're one of them, right? Make you feel important, make you feel like you're a player, right? That you're in the know, right? And that you're behind the scenes doing things, right? That you're a player and not the person being played, right? And try to give you a sense of power from that, right? And that depends on, the person, whether or not they're influenced by ego and pride. Not everyone is, right? But a lot of people are. A lot of people can be played like that. So they have a big toolbox of things they can use, right? Now, people are going to say, oh, you can't fool me still. Well, I bet you people don't see how all these work, right? And if you're taken off guard, if you're being bowled over one after the other, these methods, right? You're going to, they're going to sweep you off their feet, right? And you're not going to have time to sit back and reflect, right? It'll be like, oh, yeah. All right, so, now that's a method of how they get people to do little things for them. Here's another example of how they got, it was a tow truck driver to do a little thing for them, right? So this is related to the first one here, or the Fort Collins one. This one with the car. Lock clip on my battery cable, right? And where to go here? Okay, so this is another battery cable, and like I said, they use the same one again because they know that I'll quickly read it and recognize it and see it's them, right? So there's no mistaking that I know it's them. All right. Plus, it's going to piss me off because they did this before, and that's going to make it more likely that I say something in anger, right, which they'll record and then use that against me. All right. So they did another lock clip. Zero chance of these coming apart, right? And they're designed never to come apart. They're mechanically locked together with barbs. There's these plastic barbs that fit into slots, and you got to pry these apart, right? And then get both sides pried apart is not very easy. If you try to separate these by tugging on the wires, you're going to rip out the wires. You're going to rip out these wires out of here long before this will come apart. This is not going to come apart. These will just rip out. All right. So these things don't come apart. These clips. All right. All right, so I explained all that. Now, there's literally zero chance of them coming apart on their own. All right, recall all the impossibilities of the Colorado Fort Collins Library example. Impossible things happening, right? Multiple impossible things. All right, so they played the same game with a lock clip. So this Get You Again game was not intended to cost me a lot of money. All right, it was only intended to harass me, provoke me to complain, so they would record it, manufacture a plausible attack upon that, pass it everywhere, and use that to get an ad hominem attack upon my credibility. Same old thing, same old routine, right? So this is what happened. It was about 2002, and I was living in California at the time. I went to a church on a Sunday evening, and then after service, I walked out to my car, inserted the key, turned it. Now, when I inserted the key, unlike Colorado, everything, all the lights came on, no problem, whatever, right? Lights and sounds, whatever other sounds you have, whatever. And but when I turned the key to start the car, nothing happened, right? So the starter motor wouldn't engage, right? Now, again, immediately I said, okay, this is CIA. They're playing another game with me, right? Right. I mean, you drive to church, go to a 1-hour service, come out, your car's dead, right? Likely? No, not very likely. Could it happen? Yeah, I'm sure maybe it could happen. In an hour, not very likely, but I'm thinking, okay, they play with me so many damn games. They've been screwing me since, 1989, right? No doubt it's them, right? So I called my insurance company because I had tow insurance, and they said they would contact the insurance agent said they would contact a tow company, which they did, and then the tow company called me and said he'd be there in less than 30 minutes, right? I said, okay, fine, no big deal. But I waited and I waited and I waited, right? And so I'm waiting and waiting. It took 4 hours for this damn truck to come. 8 times as long as the dispatcher told me, right? So I'm like, oh, goodness, right? It's getting late, and I'm hungry. I didn't get dinner yet, right? And the tow truck finally shows up. The guy arrives. He gets out, and then so I ask him, I say, boy, man, that took you a long time, right? And so he says, oh, yeah, we're really busy. I was like, I was just being pleasant, a little small talk, and I said, well, at least you guys are making a lot of money, right? Trying to be nice to the guy, right? And he laughs sarcastically and then says, no, the governor's making a lot of money. I'm like, bingo, right? I know this guy's been networked. Why would he say the governor's making a lot of money? And he laughs about that. After he says it, he laughs, and then he says it, and he laughs again, right? Right? It's like a little sarcastic, little snicker laugh, right? Now, from all my experience of 30 years, being screwed with the CIA, and from a sarcastic laugh, I knew immediately that the government networked him. Feds networked him. CIA networked him, whatever. It was feds, right? Yeah. Can I prove that? No, but I knew, right? I can't prove it. People say, oh, you never know. It could be this, it could be that. You could have meant this. People throw all sorts of bullshit, right? Then he asked me, so what's the problem? Do tow drivers ask you what's the problem? They just go and they don't even say anything to you. They just line up your car and tow it away. That's what you ask them to do, right? So he asked me, what's the problem? I'm like, okay, whatever. I tell him, I didn't think anything of the question, so I told him, my car won't start. So this is what he does. He goes, gets a hammer out of his truck, right? He climbs into my car without me asking him to do this, right? And starts pounding on a metallic object. I'm like, what are you doing, right? I don't know. I'm thinking he's breaking my car, right? So then he tells me, oh, sometimes the starter motor gets stuck, right? What's a tow driver going way out of his way to climb out of your car, right? Try to free up my starter motor by pounding a hammer on it, right? And then he tells me to try starting it, and nothing's starting, right? So then he says, okay, move out of the way, and he climbs in my car, right? Gets under the dashboard, reaches way up high, right, under the dash, well out of the way, the foot pedals, wires aren't hanging down there, the foot pedals, right? It's way underneath, and he snaps together a lock clip, right? And he says, try it now. And sure enough, it starts, right? So a lock clip was pulled apart, which they don't come apart. Now, why did the CIA do this? Because they know that I'd recognize it, and they know I'd recognize them as being the cause of this, and they know I would get pissed off because they got me the same way again, right? So, all right. The lock clip on the wire. So the lock clip was on a wire for the circuit that prevents the engine from starting unless the brake pedal is pushed down, right? So you press down the brake pedal, right, and that allows the engine to start. But without that circuit connected, that won't work, right? So it won't start. It just prevents the ignition from happening, right? So I tell him those lock clips never come apart because I know they don't, right? And he lies and says, "Yeah, they do. If your foot brushes against them, right? How's my foot going to get?" So I say to him, "How is my foot going to get way up there under the dashboard? I look at where it's at. It's way up there, right? I climb under there, and even if it did somehow, how's it going to pull that lock clip apart, right? It's not going to happen. You would to pull that apart, you would have to tear the wires out long before that clip will pull apart, right?" So he just laughed after that, right? And that was it. He leaves, right? So this get you again game didn't cost me anything, other than I had to wait 4 hours, hungry, right? Late on this Sunday night, I had to go to work tomorrow, right? But it was meant to piss me off and get me to say something, which they would record, as always, and then spin it, twist it, right, pass it to the public, and they'll say, "Yeah, see, he's crazy." They'll see it exactly the way it's passed to them. They always do. Exactly the way it's passed, they'll see it. And then it would be passed. Then they would pass what I would say, getting everyone to believe I was crazy or paranoid or false accusing a liar or imagining things or a laughable joke, right? They would get everyone to laugh and mock me, right? It always works. And then no one believes what information I present, what brilliant insights I have, right? Because I'm just crazy. And then people say, "You can't fool me like that." Man, you fooled every freaking day like that. Whatever's past, people believe without even thinking. So here's a summary. I drive my car to church, no problem. I'm only there for an hour. When I come out, it won't start, right? Just like at Fort Collins, right? But it's a little different because the lights and power comes on, right? I immediately suspect that it's a CIA, FBI again. It's going to be another get you again game. They're trying to induce me to say something, which they're going to use to attack me and destroy my credibility in an ad hominem attack. I'm told by the tow truck dispatcher that it'll be less than that half hour, right? It takes 4 hours, right? 8 times as long, right? The driver laughs sarcastically and says, "Oh, it's a government making a lot of money." I know that he's been contacted by the feds, right? By that, and that it confirms to me because I've got a lot of experience with this and I've seen it so many times that he's been networked by the Fed. And then tow truck drivers never try to fix your car. If they're here to tow your car, they just tow your car. They line it up, put the chains on, whatever, get the winch and winch up your car, and then whatever, right? But no, he says, "Oh, what's wrong?" It won't start. So he, without me asking him to do it, he rushes to his truck, gets a hammer, starts pounding on my starter motor. I'm like, "What the hell are you doing?" Right? And then he says, "Oh, sometimes the starter motor gets all rusted and seized up, and it helps to pound on it." What the hell, right? I mean, maybe that could happen, but there's no way that he would out of his way to just do this. Then he forces his way into my car, reaches under the dashboard, snaps together a lock clip, right? That never come apart, right? Then it works. Then he laughs about it, right? And and then they're just trying to get me to get pissed off and say something so they can use it against me. Same old game. All right, here's the 5th example. So this is the first time the CIA, FBI strung together several damages to my car. I showed you the Fort Collins one where they strung together a bunch, right? Okay. All right. So by stringing together several damages to my car, right, the CIA, FBI make sure that I know that it's them behind it, right? That all this happening is statistically impossible. Each one of those are like statistically impossible, but all of them to occur is like crazy impossible. So it lets me know that this has to be man-made, and they've done it, right? At the same time, they know that they can get the masses to believe that, they can believe otherwise. That I'm crazy. That I'm blaming, innocent people, or I'm paranoid. I'm imagining things, right? They'll get that easy. And the more damage they string together, the more angry they know I'll get, right? And they do this too. If I don't say anything, they'll keep stringing stuff together until I say something, right? Um, Thus, the more angry I get, the more likely it is that I'll complain, and then they can use that to discredit me. They'll record that, who's recorded 24/7, right? Anyways, so this one occurred back in December 1990. This is the first time they strung together a bunch, right? There's only 3 actually. I was in grad school at Colorado State. I think it was my first semester there. Yeah, it was my first semester. I drove home to Park Ridge for Christmas break, and my nephew was newly born, about a year old, I guess it was, right around a year old. And I tell you what, I just love that kid. I still love that kid a lot, right? I love all my nephews and nieces, and I just couldn't wait to see this kid. I just wanted to pick him up and hold him and toss him around and all that stuff, right? And so, very next day, I wake up early and I call my brother, see they're home. They're gonna be home, right, during the holidays, and say, yeah, come on, drive on down. And it was sleeting out. It was freezing rain, right? And I was driving real slow, heading south on the Kennedy Expressway in Chicago, in the express lanes, and I started to slide out, right? So, I caught it, right? I turned the other way, I caught it, and I was only doing like 45 miles an hour, which is, it's, you can go a lot faster than that. So I felt I was still driving at a safe speed, and I thought if it happens again, I'll just catch it again. But it happened again, and as soon as I tried to catch it, I started spinning around. I was lucky I didn't smash into other cars. There's no cars around me, directly around me. So I was like doing like 360s, and then my left tire hit the grass, and that pulled me quickly to the left, and I slammed into a guardrail, and it mashed in my front end a little bit up into the radiator, so that the radiator was damaged, right? But nothing beyond that. So I called my brother, had my car towed to this guy he knew. So I see here, I called my brother, and he said there was a shop nearby owned by this Mexican guy who did good work, and for a good price. He was very reasonable, and I had my car towed there, right? So I met the guy, and he seemed very nice. We had a very nice, cordial conversation. And he said he can get it done for me in less than 2 weeks, right? It was a 4-week Christmas vacation, right? Christmas break, winter break. And so I figured, okay, I'll get it back in enough time, right? So after about 10 days, I called to check on the progress. It was before the 2 weeks was over, and the guy said it wasn't done. And I called like almost every day thereafter, right? When's going to be done? And the closer it got to the time I had to go home, I'm calling like every day, right? And it wasn't done. I was planning on driving. Classes started on Monday, right? It wasn't done to the 4th week on Saturday, right? So I called him. He says it's finally ready, right? And I plan to pick up my car on Saturday, get it all prepped, right? Check the air pressure, check the fluids, whatever, right? And then drive it cross country. It was 1,060 miles to Colorado, Fort Collins. I did that trip quite a bit, and so over 1,000 miles. And I would do that in one day on Sunday, right? So I went to the shop, and his behavior toward me had transformed totally, right? When I first met him, our interaction was friendly and cordial, just, two people don't know each other, just being, standard politeness, whatever, right? And I'm kind of a nice guy, joke around, and, until people piss me off and, like, insult me, whatever, right? But, I'm nice to the guy, and now he visibly hates me. It's clear he just hates me. He's seething with hate for me, and he's mocking, saying like little digs, right? And I could tell he just despises me now, right? And that's standard CIA procedure. Get him all jacked up, right? And then he retrieves my car and drove it up to the front of the garage, right? Just inside the big garage door, right? And he pops the hood, right? And then he motions me over and says, hey, check it out, make sure it's okay, sign off on this, right? He wants me to sign off on this car. Like, who's done it before? But he wants me to do that, right? So I'm looking at it, right? And then I see that there's white smoke starting to pour out of the power steering pump, right? It's like, so I was like, hey, look, there's some white smoke there. And he's like, no, that's nothing. Don't worry about that. There's nothing there, right? I'm like, what? I was like taken aback. I was like shocked. I was kind of silent. I didn't say anything. So I'm looking at it like, what? Right? How does he not see it, right? And then the smoke is getting, thicker, right? So then I say, no, there's smoke there, right? And he's like, no, don't worry about it. It's nothing. It'll pass, right? So then the smoke is pouring out more and more. And I wait another minute thinking, what the hell, right? And I'm waiting to see what it's going to do, right? And finally I raised my voice and said, listen, there's clearly smoke pouring out of there, right? And then he just turns right away, right? Without any hesitation, he walks over to a shelf, right? Gets a can of power steering fluid, opens the what do you call it, reservoir, pours it in, right? Pours some in, right? And the smoke clears, goes away, right? Okay, as it turns out, the radiator not only cools the coolant fluid to cool the engine, but it also cools the power steering fluid. The power steering line, of course, attaches to the power steering unit, but it's also sent to the radiator to be cooled by the radiator, right? And he replaced the radiator, brand new radiator, right? So he knows that this could be happening. He knows that this could be the problem, right? There's no doubt in my mind he knew exactly what was going on, right? Now people are going to say, well, he just made a mistake. Well, okay, let's see what else happened. And I'm thinking, with all the information in my mind, the whole thing had happened, the CIA, FBI were trying to cause me to break down somewhere in the middle of nowhere, like somewhere in Iowa or Nebraska or Wyoming or something like that, right? And I get to get stuck there, right? Take my car into another shop where they screw with it some more, and I'm there for days, staying in a hotel, late for classes, paying a bunch of hotel bills, and paying a bunch of auto repair bills, right? And just screwing with you, and then getting me to say something, right? And then boom, attack my credibility. So, all right. So that happened. I drive my car home, no problem, and I go directly to a standard gas station near my mom's home in Park Ridge, where I knew that there was free air. And so I first filled up the left front tire, no problem, and then I started filling up the left rear tire, and the pressure nozzle thing, whatever you call it, it was one that had the pressure gauge that pops out and tells you the pressure as you're putting in air, and it goes up more, right? So I get to like 35, and I was like to fill up to like 35, and I let off, and as soon as I let off, the air valve on that tire locks open. That's never happened to me before, ever. It locks open, and all the air goes, psh, and it's a total flat, right? It goes totally flat. All the air goes out to zero pressure, right? I try to fill it again, and no, it's just going to come out. So then I open up the trunk. I take off the wheel, put on the spare, right? And not thinking it's going to happen to the right side, right? I figured I'd take it. There was a shell with a full garage just down the block, right? I figured I'd take it over there and just have them, pop on the new valve into the tire, right? And then so I go to fill the right one, and same thing happens. Psh, all the damn air comes out, right? Something, oh crap, right? I didn't have tow insurance back then, so I figured, well, it's only like less than a block, down the street. I'll just kind of roll slowly. And I had these aluminum mag wheels, right? Aluminum alloy wheels, right? no, not aluminum. I had these alloy wheels, right? And I was worried that the wheels would get all dinged up, whatever. Right? But I drove real slow and make sure I didn't hit any potholes, whatever. Right? And I was worried that the rim would cut up the tires, but it didn't. But I got there to the Shell gas station. The guy put it on the lift and changed, took off the tires and changed the valves for me, right? And he checked the front right, and the front right was okay. So the two front were okay, but the two back were set to whatever, self-destruct or whatever you want to say. And I don't know. I don't know what would happen, as I'm driving down the road, maybe, but that was pretty damn suspicious. Never have I ever had a valve open, but then have two open like that. And then, so I get on the road. The next day, I jump in my car. I used to start real early, like 6 in the morning. It takes all day. It took me like 16 hours with, gas and brakes, whatever, to get to Colorado. And as I'm driving somewhere in Nebraska, all of a sudden, I'm doing exactly the speed limit. I have the cruise control. I set it right exact the speed limit. And also here, it was loud, like crazy loud, right? And I'm like, what the hell, right? Coming from my engine. And so I pull over on the shoulder, right? Put on my flashers, whatever. I get on my car, and I listen for the sound where it's coming from. And I look in, and I see it's coming from the manifold, exhaust manifold on the left side. See, I got a picture here. Yeah, okay, so I got a picture. Let's see here. Oh. All right, so there's my battery. Like I told you, that's remember that the lock clip was like a foot down there, all right? And okay, so the manifold, it's a 4-cylinder, inline 4, first cylinder, second, third, fourth, whatever, right? And exhausts this way into the common manifold, right? That runs back towards the tailpipe and the muffler, whatever, right? And right about there, straight down, there is this. There's an oxygen sensor. All right, here is the oxygen sensor device with a wire. All right, and here's an example. I hand drew this, but this is roughly, what it was. Here's the engine, 4 cylinders, first, second, third, fourth. Here's the exhaust pipes out of each cylinder. Here's a common manifold. Then right downstream of this is the oxygen sensor. You don't want too much air, all right, because then that's just inefficient. You want just the right amount of air, so you want whatever. I'm not sure exactly how much oxygen they want there, but they don't want to have too much oxygen because they don't want to burn too lean, I guess, right? I guess that's what it's measuring. All right, so this has been blown out. This is out. It's dangling below this pipe by a wire. That wire, right? And you hear all the noise from my engine idling there coming out of this damn hole, right? And so then I look at both mounting bolts. Here is where this goes in. This goes over mounting bolts. There's bolts that should have been coming out of the pipe here and here. This goes over those bolts, and then you get the nuts and torque down on it with washers and stuff to hold this down. The bolts were gone, both of them. Right. All right. So now on the front and back mounting plank there were screw holes. Yeah. So there's screw holes, open screw holes, but no bolts. Right. Let's see. What do I say here? So I just stuck the oxygen sensor back in the hole. I was in the middle between, nowhere near a town. So, again, I didn't have tow insurance at this time. And so I figured, well, let's see if I can just shove that back into the hole. And I found that if I drive at very low RPMs, it wouldn't create enough pressure in the exhaust pipe to blow this out. And so the oxygen sensor stayed in. So I'm in 5th gear, doing just over 1,000 RPMs again, right around, right? And my flash is on. I'm just crawling along in 5th gear, right? Now, towns in Nebraska are pretty sparse, few and far between. I finally found one with an auto parts store. I go in. The guys were very helpful. They showed me a diagram. They had like a microfiche diagram, and they put it on the machine, and they showed me the part, okay, and they went and retrieved it, said double and screw. They told me how to bolt it in. They say what you do is you get 2 wrenches, you get 2 bolts on each of the, and then you torque them together, right? Torque one way, torque one the other way, so that they lock together. Then you use a top bolt to thread it in because it's not going to move being locked to the other bolt, right? And you jam that into the hole. You torque it in tight so it doesn't move, right? And then you break those 2 bolts from each other, and then do it to the other side, mount that. And then you put this back in, and then you put the bolts on top, so forth, right? So I do that, and that works fine, right? So what I'm thinking, shit, what happened here? I should. So both of these mounting bolts are gone. Oh shit. All right, both those mounting bolts are gone. Wait a minute here. It's hard to do this without the mouse. Okay. Both of these bolts are gone. That doesn't happen, right? Certainly one, certainly one won't go, but both of them, that's impossible, right? So what I'm thinking they did is this, right? They removed both bolts, right? Then they reinstalled the oxygen sensor, but they only turned in this bolt maybe a couple of turns, a couple of threads, just barely holding. And then they hand tightened down the nut, right? They didn't torque it down, right? So it was easy to vibrate off and at some point blow out, right? And let's see here. What do I say here? I say all 3 of these things are like impossible, but certainly the air valves, 2 air valves going bad, impossible. 2 missing mounting bolts, right? Impossible, right? But you know what? They would pass this, right? And they would get Erwin to believe that I was crazy, that I was false accusing crazy, right? They wouldn't pass all the information, and people wouldn't bother to listen to it all, right? They would just take what's told to them exactly as it's passed to them, and that would be the way they perceive it, and it would get reinforcement in social reality, and that would be the definite perception. All right, so would a seized up and destroyed power steering pump strand me? Absolutely. Would 2 flat tires out of nowhere strand me? Absolutely. Would a blown oxygen sensor with both bolts gone nuts strand me? Absolutely. Right. Fortunately, I had enough wherewithal and ability to fix this stuff, right? And I was lucky to catch the tire valves. I was lucky to do the fill my tires before I took the trip, right? To catch all this stuff. And like I said, I believe that they were the ideal scenario they're hoping for was like the worst case scenario for me, which is strand me out somewhere in some podunk little town, right? Stuck in a hotel, taking my car to shop, right? Having them delayed, right? Day after day, and then causing more damage or whatever, right? And then I'm late for classes, and I miss a bunch of class, and cost me a lot of money, and that sort of thing. And then I say something, which they record, and they pass, and and I'm a crazy, false accusing liar, conspiracy theorist, same old stuff, right? Crazy liar, conspiracy theorist, a fool, a laughing stock, overanalyzer, imagining things, and they'll get people to believe that, right? And they'll get people to laugh at it, and they'll get everyone going on it. It'll be dominant social reality, which everyone believes. Okay, so here's a summary. I have 4 weeks for winter break, right? The repair shop tells me that they can get it fixed in less than 2 weeks, right? Our first meeting is friendly and cordial, right? The car isn't ready until the very last day. When I meet the guy again, he's hateful. Why is he hating me? Why is he mocking me, insulting me, right? Why is he being sarcastic and laughing and snickering, right? Then he tries to get me to buy off on my car being good, right? When smoke is clearly pouring out of it, right? And he lies repeatedly. Oh, it's okay, right? And there's I say that this is the one that's maybe not impossible, but it is impossible not to see that smoke unless you're Helen Keller or Stevie Wonder or whatever, you're going to see that smoke. And so he fills it up, and it's okay. I should have checked the level. I remember I didn't check the level, but he just poured some in there and then stopped smoking, so I knew it was okay. But if that power steering motor broke out when I was driving, I'd be stuck somewhere. I'd be stranded somewhere. And chances are I couldn't replace that myself. I mean, I could have, but then you need a big torque bar and so forth, and you probably have to bleed the lines. Yeah, it'd be more difficult for me. With limited tools on the road. Okay, that would strand me. Then the two tires, right? That could have stranded me. And then the oxygen center blows out, right? That could have stranded me, but I was able to fix it myself, right? For nominal cost, but it did cost me to spend the night. I was going to drive across. I had to go get a hotel room. I was late for class, right? One day, because I had to spend the night in somewhere in Nebraska. Right, it got too late. All right. So it's the same old thing. Now, like I said, the reason why they string it together is because they know that I will know for sure that it's them, that all these happening simultaneously is not possible, right? And they know they can pass this off, right, as this one big bulk thing. Oh, he's blaming people for his car, and then get everyone to get all pissed off or whatever it may. And yeah, so that was the first time they strung together a few things. It was only 3 at that time, right? But all right, so here is something where they did. It was in the late 1990s. I can't remember exactly what year, but they poured something corrosive. I'm thinking brake fluid. Brake fluid is pretty damn corrosive into the hydraulic fluid of my clutch master cylinder reservoir. So what happened was I needed new shocks in my front end of my car. I didn't think I'd be able to do it myself. They're McPherson struts. You need special tools to get them off. So I figured, well, I'll just go take them in. And I called around. The cheapest shop was in Montgomery Ward's at Randhurst Shopping Mall on Rand Road, somewhere like Arlington Heights or something like that. Anyways, okay, this I kind of blame myself because I was super stupid. They already networked to 2 garages, right, to screw with me at this point. And so this is a few years later, and they hadn't got my car in a few years, right? So I took my car in, and part of the reason why I was fooled is because, I had a real nice. I remember being very friendly, cordial with the person who, it's always one of the mechanics that are actually taking a place at, the cashier or whatever who take your car. You bring them the problem, you tell them what it is, what you want done, and they set you the whatever, they set it up to get done. They tell you when it's going to be ready and whatever, right? And so I had some shopping to do at the mall, so I walked over there. It's a little further away. The Montgomery Ward's garage is off to the side near the road. And so I walked over there and went back at the time. They told me it was supposed to be done, but they said it wasn't done. And when I went back, the people who were nice and cordial changed completely. It was just like that guy, the Mexican guy at the auto repair shop, right? They got mean. They're mean, insulting, angry. They clearly hateful of me, right? And there were two guys there, and they're like passing stuff back and forth. There's like nasty little snide remarks, and I knew that it was directed at me, right? They're being mocking and ridiculing, sarcastic, and they were just hateful, right? Just seething hate, right? And they told me the car would be a while longer, and I wanted to go into the garage and watch them. They said, "Can I go stand in there?" Right? And they said, "No, you got to go in the waiting room." So I'm like, "Okay, great." Right? I got to go in the waiting room. There's a separate room off to the side with a TV and a bunch of chairs and magazines. And so I'm sitting there thinking, "Great, who knows what they're gonna do, right?" And this guy walks in who I recognize him from high school. He was one of my brother's acquaintances. He was actually, my brother was 2 years older than me. He was only 1 year older than me, but my brother knew him somehow, right? They maybe had a class together or something like that. And so he comes in, and he comes up close to me, kneels on both knees in front of me, right? And he gets real close, and he whispers, he says, "Hey, there's a policy here that if they go over the time they promised, then they have to give you no charge for labor. They'll just charge you for parts, right?" So I'm like, "Okay, cool," right? And then he leaves, right? I get in my car, I'm driving home, and as I'm driving home, the clutch is like, I press in the clutch, and then if I hold the clutch in for a while, it starts slipping and starts engaging on its own. Like there's some slippage there, right? So the clutch, which is pressed open, is now slipping back and contacting the whatever plate in the transmission, right? So I know there's a problem, right? And I drive it home. I go to check it the next day, and the clutch is totally not moving, right? I press in the clutch pedal, and the clutch is fully engaged, right? So it's not moving at all, which means that the seals in the master cylinder probably, right, there's two cylinders. There's a master cylinder, and at the other end, the clutch is the slave cylinder. I'm thinking the master cylinder, the seals in that have been corroded away. They poured something in there to eat it away. Now, does that ever happen? Does that happen that within one day, within just hours, right, it's eaten away and it's starting to slip? Now, it doesn't happen in one day. The full thing is gone. Right? So I'm thinking, okay, they got me, right? So I know that I have to replace the master cylinder, and I know that I have to flush the hydraulic fluid repeatedly to get out whatever corrosive materials in there, right? So I go to the auto parts store. I buy a brand new master cylinder. It costs, I think, around $60, as I recall, right? And get a bunch of hydraulic fluid, right? Because I'm not going to, use a bunch. And I start flushing it. I figured that, whatever rubber thing, O-rings, seals, gaskets are eaten away, right? So here's a new master cylinder. Here's the reservoir where you pour the fluid into, right? And let's see here. So now to flush it, it's a very difficult process when you're by yourself, right? I guess it would help if you had another partner to help you, but this is what you got to do, right? You got to first crawl into the car, and where the slave cylinder was for the clutch was on the right side, somewhat near the front right tire, right? About even with the front right tire. And then you get there's a bleed valve right towards the end there, right before the slave cylinder, and or right after the slave cylinder, whatever. And you got to crack that open, right? So you open it up, and then you have to go to your car seat, and then press down the clutch, and then you got to brace down. You got to hold down the clutch pedal with a piece of wood, like a stick, right? You prop that against the seat, prop that against the clutch pedal, hold it down. Then you got to crawl under your car and close the bleed valve. Then you got to climb back up, right, and then release the stick, right? Then you got to go check the hydraulic fluid levels, right, and refill it if it needs to be refilled. And then you got to go crawl in your car and then crack open the bleed valve again. Then you got to repeat this process 20 or 30 times. It is time consuming. It is, it is frustrating. It's a real pain in the butt. So then I replaced the master cylinder, and I was able to drive back to the Montgomery wards. I can't remember when, but it was within a day or so, right? And I complained, right? I said, listen, this shouldn't have happened, right? You guys did something to it, right? I accused them, right? And they basically said, prove it, right? So they said, prove it, right? I'm sure they're told that they can just say that, right? Right away, they just, okay, prove it. And I'm like, okay, I can't prove it, right? Maximum deniability, I got no hard evidence that they did it, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm screwed. Then I ask, well, can I talk to Mike? And they said, well, no, he's been fired. Like, what? Right? And they said he was a crappy worker, and I'm thinking any money, well, I don't know exactly why he was fired. He seemed like a very decent guy. He's a nice guy, real nice guy. Not the type of guy that'd be a screwball, right? He was, I think his name was Mike Wang. He was a Chinese guy, right? I think it was the type of guy who would be, a good worker, right? On the ball, right? And so I'm thinking, part of the reason why he's fired, or maybe the whole reason, was because he came and he told me. Now he's whispering to me, right, on his knees in front of me, close, right? Apparently he didn't want people to hear, right? Anyways, they found out apparently, and I'm willing to bet that they fired him because of that. So he's fired, all right? Well, I don't know exactly why, but because I didn't know who he was, or I didn't call him. All right. Anyways, then within 1 week, brand new master cylinder. The clutch is eating away, and the clutch starts slipping. Clutch won't open. 1 week, right? So I got to buy another one. That's another $60, right? I replaced that one. That one lasts a month, right? Then that one's eaten away, right? I flush it. I'm flushing it like crazy. I'm thinking that's got to be enough, right? It's amazing how many, just how corrosive whatever they put in there was. It just takes not many molecules even. So then I do it again. I replace it, and that lasts 6 months. And then it goes, right? Then I flush, and then I replace it, and this one lasted permanently. This one lasted forever until I got rid of the car a number of years later. It's no problem, right? So here's a summary, right? I go to an auto shop to have my front shocks changed. Okay, no problem. My interaction with the workers are pleasant and friendly, right? No big deal, it's all right. And then they give me an estimated amount of time, which is reasonable, right? I go back. When I go back, these people are hateful. They're just turned 180, like, why are they just hateful now all of a sudden? They're mocking, ridiculing. And there's two guys there. They're passing little snide things back and forth at each other, little, mean little glances at me and stuff. And so it's clearly directed towards me. So worried, I asked to go back to the garage and watch, but they say I can't do that because of insurance reasons, safety or something like that, some safety violation. And I say, okay, fine, I'll go in the waiting room, right? And I'm just sitting there going, oh, great, I know they're going to do something. So then my brother's high school acquaintance or friend comes up, and he kneels on the floor with me on 2 knees, right? And he whispers to me that, this policy that I should get free labor, right? So I ask for that, I get it, right? And I drive my car home, and on the way home, the clutch pedal is starting to slip. And I'm thinking, okay, great, they got me, right? So I go check the next day, and it's totally wasted. I press the pedal in, and the clutch is not moving at all, right? The seals are totally eaten away. All right. So then I go to complain, right? And they just say, prove it, right? Right? We didn't do it, prove it, right? And then I asked to speak to Mike. He's fired, right? And then the first clutch I replaced lasts only a week. Second place, the clutch lasts a month, and the third clutch lasts 3 months. And then the fourth master cylinder, clutch master cylinder I replaced lasted finally, right? It took me 4 times. That doesn't happen. That is not possible, right? Unless someone poured some corrosive fluid in there. Those things, those master cylinders typically last from the time you buy the car to the time you get rid of it. You know, it's just rare that you have to replace those things. I mean, it happens, but okay. Seventh one. Here's one that happened fairly recently. They strung together. I'm going to take a break here. People are chatting and talking. Okay, I'm back here. Let me get rid of this. Okay. Oh God, what is this? I'm gonna get rid of that. All right. So where was I? Oh, okay. This is the most recent example where they strung a bunch together, right? And like I said, they string a bunch together, one, so that you know for sure it's them. These things don't happen like randomly. What are the chances they're all going to happen together? And then by stringing them together, they really piss you off, right? And they're trying to ensure that you say something. And in this one, I didn't say a thing, right? It didn't cost me, well, it did cost me a lot, but I didn't say a thing, right? But they try to string them together to get you so pissed off you say something. Then, like I say, they record that, take that, and spin that so they can attack you. And people take it the way they send it to them, right? People fall for it. All right, so this get you game didn't involve much damage, but it was costly, right? And designed to really piss me off so as to produce some comment or complaint or reactions. I say something, right, which they would record and then twist into an attack that all the masses will see exactly the way it's spun for them to see. And this works all the time. This is another example of how they string a number of attacks together so that I know without a doubt that it's not a random accident and that it is the CIA behind it. It's impossible that all these things like boom, 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 right? I mean, this one's more possible, I guess. This is not like the actual physical damage, so I want to say that this is more possible. So, if there are any of these examples, and I give you 8 examples. I'll give you one more after this. If there's any examples they want to use to attack me, they'll focus all attention on this one. Right? And then they won't put it all together. They'll just take one element of this and attack that. Right? They know that you have limited things in your mind. You're not going to remember all this stuff, right? And they'll just have you focus on one little aspect of this one example, and they'll attack it. That's a typical thing they'll do. So it's meant to keep jacking me up until I say something, right? So here's the thing that was going on. I was planning on driving from Chicago to Allentown to visit my brother's family on a Monday, right? And because I was in contact with my brother, the FBI, CIA knew that this is what I was going to do, right? So to kind of explain the sequence of things that happen day after day, 4 days in a row, we'll call them Monday D-Day. That's the day I'm going to get in my car and drive, all right? And therefore Sunday would be D-1, Saturday would be D-2, and Friday would be D-3, okay? So on Friday, D-3, I parked my car in a handicap spot, and I was able to do that because I had one of those handicap tags that you hang from your rear view mirror, all right? And the reason why I had that, I wasn't like cheating. I was in pretty bad shape, pretty broken down. At this point, I was better, right? I knew it was a toxic mold, and I'm doing my best to evade it, but they're still whacking me everywhere. They're chasing me everywhere throughout Chicago and the suburbs. Within 30 minutes to 90 minutes of me going to some place, they'd have installed a toxic mold dispenser, right, into the ventilation. But anyway, but I was better, but still I had the tag, so I used it. And all right, so when I came back to my car, there was a bum waiting there, and he tells me, "Your car got towed." Like, why the hell is this guy waiting there? Right? How does he know my car's gone? Right? He tells me my car got towed. Right? And I'm thinking, this is bullshit, man. They said this guy wait there. Right? So then I call around, find out where my car's at. It was about a mile away, so I just walked over there. Wasn't walking too well. I had trouble walking there, but I got there, and I had to pay for it. I can't remember exactly how much it was, but I kind of think it was over $200. It's pretty expensive, right? So that cost me some, right? And I get in my car, the tag is gone, right? So someone broke in my car and took the handicap tag, right? All right, now, why would they take that and not anything else? All right, kind of strange, right? Maybe there's a black market for handicap tags. All right, I don't know. You can sell them on eBay or something like that. So the very next day, this is Saturday, D-2. Very next day, D-2. Right. I go outside to ride my bike, which I had locked up in front of my apartment, right? And the cable's cut and the bike's stolen. All right, it's just Chicago, that can happen, right? But it was a crappy bike. It was a cheap bike I bought as a spare second bike, right? And I left it outside because I didn't care. It was cheap, right? It was a Huffy. I bought it at Walmart. It was on sale for $69, right? And it was rusted out by this time. I kept it out there for 2 years. It was rusted, It wasn't much of a bike, and had it for 2 years outside. It was stolen. All right, that could happen, right? So the CIA will focus on this. Oh, see, he thinks his bike was stolen in Chicago. He's blaming it. Yeah, okay, right. All right, so the bike is stolen, right? So the very next day, D-1 on Sunday, I go to my car to prepare for the trip tomorrow, and it was broken into. I go to the GPS. Two things were taken. I had GPS, which was stolen, and then I had in a poster tube 2 posters of the Chicago Bears team signed by 2 of the Bears, which I'd planned to give to my nephews, who were big Bears fans, even though they lived in Pennsylvania now, and they were athletes themselves, very athletic, and I knew they would love them, right? So the thing about it was, the CIA left me. This is a typical thing they do. They leave me a clear, but yet deniable signature. So they put their signature that they did this in a way that is easily deniable. That's what they work in. They work in maximum deniability. They work in clever ways to make sure you know that it's them, but in a way that's totally deniable. I've been exposed to their stuff from the first day when I moved to Colorado. That's when the CIA, FBI were on to me, right? I was exposed to it back then with, I'm not going to tell you what. It was something to do with ski racks during the summertime. Anyways, I'm not going to get into that. I have to explain the whole thing. And, more like, oh, you're crazy. Well, they did it in a way to make sure you know it was them. Right. All right. So, when I'm not using my GPS, right, just driving around Chicago, I take it off. I take there's like a suction cup with a lever. You take it off, and I leave the bracket. The GPS is like a cell phone, which has these slots in it, and there's these. The bracket has these. Protrusions that go into fit perfectly in the slots, right? And you got to pry it apart, right? So I leave that on, and I left in the power cord, right? It's just plugged in the back, right? Okay. So when they took the GPS, they just took the GPS. They broke into my car, took off the bracket, which you got to pry off. And then they unplugged it, left the power cord that goes to your cigarette lighter, right? There, right? And they took the GPS. Now, if you're going to bother to break into a car, I mean, that's a signature. They let me know that's them, because no one's going to do that. You break into a car, right, to take the GPS. What good is a GPS without its power cord and without its mounting bracket, right? And then why do you take the extra time and effort to take it all apart and then leave those behind, right? So it's meant to show to tell me, this is us, right? We're doing this just to screw with you, and we're letting you know it's us, right? And then here's another thing. Okay, so here is the power cord. It mounts, I think, in the back somewhere. And then there's like these slots in your GPS, and then on the bracket there's these protrusions which fit into the slots. And this is like spring-loaded type thing. The plastic, you gotta pry this off to get it off, right? Right. So it takes some effort to get it off, right? And they took the posters, which they knew were important for me because I wanted to, make my nephews happy, right? And they left these, right? So I had tons of things in there. Why would they just take those two things? Why would they take this apart and leave important key necessary parts behind? And right next to the GPS in that compartment, I had a fuzz buster, police radar detector, which is valuable. Why did they leave that? It's right there for them to take. If someone's going to break in the car to steal stuff, they would take everything there. Right next to that, in the same compartment, it had a $50 Leatherman multi-purpose hand tool. It's right there. Why not grab it? Right to the left of on the dashboard, I had one of those compartments that pull out, right, like a cigarette tray thing, but it's for change, and it had about $10 in quarters there. They left that, right? I had plenty of expensive tools in my trunk, right? Several $100s at least, right? I had a hydraulic jack, which is about $25. I had a cigarette lighter air pump, another about $25, I'd say. I had ramps to work in the car, another $30 or something like that. Why would they leave all this? You're gonna break into my car, right, and risk getting caught, right? Why would you leave all this stuff behind, right? So, they're doing it to tell me it's them, right? They're playing games, right? Now it's deniable, right? People say, "Well, you're imagining things." They will, right? So if they take the time and effort and risk involved to break into my car, right? Why did they take everything, right? And then why did they take apart my GPS intentionally and leave necessary critical parts behind, which, you can't use a GPS without those things. And then on Monday, when I'm going to drive to Allentown and get in my car, right, and I see right away on my dashboard that there's a red light indicator showing that the tire pressure was low. Right? It's red. It shows like a flat tire, right? So I go out and check, and sure enough, one of my tires is low. And then I see that there's a screw screwed into it, right? A Phillips head screw screwed into the tread, the thick part, right? And it let the air leak out, right? There's still some air left in, probably like 15 pounds of air, enough for me to just drive to, a local shop just down the road. Right, and I had the guy, remove the screw and fix the hole. They do something where it's like they shove like a resin type thing in there. Anyways, they fix the hole, right? Pulls out the screw. It's about an inch long, right? Now, I'm thinking, well, maybe it's possible for a screw to be pushed through, but I think it's not very likely. Right? I mean, I can see a nail being pushed through, right? Especially a thin nail, right? Not very long, right? But a screw's got threads on it, right? Right? The guy who took out that screw, he had to torque on it with a screwdriver, right? He couldn't pull it out. So he screws it out with a screwdriver, right? Right? I'm thinking, that's very unlikely. Now, there's a chance there. So this is one the CIA is going to attack. They're going to focus all attention on this. No one's going to remember all the absolutely impossible ones that happened. So they'll focus all attention on this one. So this one is more likely that there's some possibility that this could have happened, right? I mean, somebody could have been moron to, oh, I'm gonna leave the bracket behind. I'm gonna disconnect the power plug too, leave that behind. It takes me more effort and time and risk, fiddling around in this car. Well, yeah, okay, all right. So, all right. Yeah, I know. If the CIA is going to attack on this, they're going to focus on this one. And they don't have to do it because no one's going to remember anything in the end, right? They're going to forget it all. And then they'll just create a wave in social reality. Oh, he's crazy, and everyone's going to fall for it. Same old game. All right, so this is the last example I'll give you, and this is one which had potentially the most risk of injury to either, well, maybe not to myself because I'm in a U-Haul truck and this is behind me, but possibly to other people. If my car, broke away, I was towing my car behind a U-Haul truck. If it broke away and flipped, and maybe that's unlikely, right? Maybe it would have just caused damage to my car, like mess up the alignment. Or something like that. I can easily see it messing up the alignment of my car. Maybe that's all would have happened, but I don't know. I don't know what could have happened, but this is what was done. All right. So the CIA played this very same game on me twice. Remember I said they like to do it twice to jerk you up, right? They played this one twice also. Right. First in 1992. Then in 2003, and both of them involved me moving across country. One from Colorado to Chicago after I completed my coursework at Colorado State, and the other one I moved from California back to Fox Lake, Illinois. All right, so I was going to switch to pharmacy, and so I was driving across country. Now, both involved a U-Haul truck and the trailer to tow my car, the what's it called, the auto tow trailer. Yeah, I guess that's a nickname for it, right? And there were two types. The first one I got was the two-wheel type, where you drive it on like this. The second one was a full trailer, where you drive the whole car on top. All right. Both of them had a mechanism where you wrap a big nylon strap. Web thing around the front wheels, and it locks in place. There's like a ratchet system, right, which locks. And anyways, so there are thick nylon web straps that wrap around the front tire, and I pull tight with a ratchet lever. You just crank on it like a ratchet wrench, like crank. And there's like a geared thing, right, with teeth, right, and then there's a spring-mounted little thing that catches the gears, right, in one direction, that you have to crank it open and then push it out of the way and then let it release if you want to release it. So there's 3 safety devices on this first type I had. The first safety device was the ratchet wrench itself. The ratchet would catch, and then the little spring-loaded thing would hold the teeth, right? The second is there was a lever that you throw over that clamped it down somehow. I forget exactly how it worked, but it was a safety lever that either clamped the ratchet wrench, or clamped the strap, or both, or something. I can't remember exactly how it worked, but I remember there was a throw lever that you had to throw it over, right, 180 degrees, press it down, right, and then the third safety device was for that lever, the safety lever. There was a cotter pin so it could not move, right? It could come up. So there's 3 safety devices. Now, I left Fort Collins and I started driving north on Route 70. When I got up into Wyoming, I eventually hit Interstate 80 that runs east-west. I got on that, heading east. And just before I got to the Nebraska border, I'm still in Wyoming, right? There was always a big rest stop with all these, every damn fast food place that you want, right? And all these gas stations and so forth. There's like a big complex thing, right? And I tended to stop there, so I stopped there for lunch, right? Went to Burger King, and had lunch there. Then I got back in the truck and I started driving east. And not too long after that, for some reason, I don't know why, but something got me to look in my left side mirror behind me. I mean, I don't know why I did this because I don't think, but I did, right? And then I saw a car pulling up in the left lane. There's two lanes on each side of the road, right? And I'm in the right lane going, whatever truck speed. A car pulls up and he stops right at my front tire of the car, right? And there's two guys in there, and they're both like leaning over and looking at my front left tire of my car, and I'm thinking, that's strange, right? What are they doing that? Why did they pull up, match my speed, stay in that there, and steer for a time? Then they pulled away in front of me, right? And I immediately got suspicious, and I've been screwed for 3 years now. This is I got out in '89. This is '92. I've been screwed for 3 years, right? So I know these guys play their dirty games. So I immediately got suspicious, and I pulled over on the very next exit ramp, right? It wasn't but like a few miles away, 5, maybe 7 miles away, no more. I can't remember exactly how far, but it wasn't very far. Pull off, right, and I inspect it, and sure enough, the left strap is pulled out. Pulled very loose. It's not connected anymore. And I'm thinking, there's no way this happens naturally. There's 3 damn safety devices, right? So from there on out, I tighten it back up, right? From there on out, every time I stop for gas, every time I stop for something to eat, every time I stop to go to the bathroom, when I come out, I check the strap like I was paranoid, right? I check the straps before I get underway, right? All right, so that happened, and nothing happened again from then on out, right? But I would have driven pretty much, I'm saying close to 1,000 miles with that. Now, I don't know if anything would have happened. Maybe one tire was enough. Maybe the most that would happen would torque my alignment out of alignment, right? But worst case scenario, something bad could have happened, and if my car broke free as it's going down the road, it could tumble, and if there's cars nearby, I'm not saying that would have happened, but it's a possibility, right? So that's why I say it's potentially the most threatening. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but I don't know what would happen. I honestly don't know what could happen. Maybe it could have done nothing. Maybe it could have just torqued my frame out of alignment, or steering out of alignment, something like that. I don't know. So anyways, what happened was then I was living in California in 2003, and I was going to move back to Illinois, Fox Lake, driving across country, all the way from California. This is well over 1,000 miles. And my younger brother was very nice, and he decided he'll help me drive, right? He'll keep me company and share the driving. So he's going to go with me, right? And so now I'd have to drive over 2 mountain ranges. First you drive over the Sierras, pretty steep mountains, right? Then you got to drive over the Rockies, up and down throughout the Rockies, right? That's up and down, right? All right, now at every gas stop, every restaurant we stopped to eat, every hotel that we slept at, right? I think we took like 2-3 days. Yeah, we took I think 3 days to go across. Anyways, after getting to the truck, I would check the straps, right? And the whole way across, I Googled it. It's 2,023 miles, right? Let's see here. The whole way, there's nothing. So it's one of these. And now this one didn't have the 3 safety devices. It only had the ratchet. So I guess they felt, well, the ratchet's enough. That's all you need, right? So the ratchet was all I had, and the drive was 2,023 miles, right, from Rockland to Fox Lake, according to Google Maps, right? And when we got to Fox Lake, in downtown Fox Lake, there's only one Burger King right on Route 12 there, and it's only less than 2 miles to my new home. And We stopped at the Burger King for lunch. I think it was like lunch, maybe it was dinner. Can't remember, but it was pretty bright out still. And I parked my car at the Burger King. So here's the front of the store. Here's the street out in front here, right? Here's the side. This is where the parking is. There's spots all along here. I pulled in, like I hogged a bunch of spots. Here's the truck. Here's the trailer with my car on it, right? And there was like a rise that went uphill over here, and there was like a retaining wall, about a 4 foot, maybe 3 foot high retaining wall over here, right? So I couldn't see from this side. I wasn't really paying attention either, right? We're just eating our lunch, right? And then, like my habit was, after we finished lunch, I went out, checked this side. It's okay. I went to check this side, and I saw the strap was off. The strap was totally pulled out, right? And so I yelled to my brother, say, Larry, get over here, right? I'm like screaming at him like I'm mad at him. I wasn't mad at him. I was pissed off at these guys pulling the strap out, right? And then as soon as I said that, I realized right away, like, no, wait a minute, right? They're not trying to really do something here, right? They're just trying to jerk my chain because there's only 2 miles left. I mean, what's going to happen in the last 2 miles, right? Chances are nothing's going to happen, all right? So they know that I know they did this to me before, right? And so they do it again. They know I'm going to get pissed off, which I was. I got pissed off, right? So I know that now they're going to take what I said, record what I said, right, and then pass it everywhere. So I immediately said to my brother, oh, this is what they're doing. I explained to them. They just want to get me, they just induce me to say something so they can take that, right, and spin that and use that against me, right, to get people to believe that I'm all crazy and whatever, right, same old stuff. And so I don't know if anything was done because I was brand new there. I didn't know anyone, and I don't think anyone knew me. No one was really networked in the local area, so I couldn't get any feedback. So I don't know if there was any effect to that. Anyways, mass is long, forgot that, whatever it is. All right, so I was going to try to explain different methods, review some different methods in which the CIA assigns their signature to something to let you know for sure, without any doubt in their mind, that it's them, but in a way that has maximum deniability. Right? And I told you that. They talked about that in the documents pertaining to the Gulf of Tonkin incident, where different, director of the CIA, the CIA station chief, the ambassador to Vietnam, Henry Cabot Lodge Jr., and other people, all were saying, yeah, we can conduct this attack in a way in which Ho Chi Minh leaves no doubt in Ho Chi Minh's mind that it was us, but in a way in which we'd have maximum deniability. That's classic. This is stuff they do. This is spy stuff. People are going to say, oh, it's crazy. You can't do that, right? And you know what's going to happen? No one's going to remember any of the facts I taught here. And then in a day or so, they'll create a wave, and everyone's going to say, he's crazy. That's exactly what's going to happen. Anyways, so I know that this was all a practice in futility. No one's going to remember a thing. No one's going to learn a thing from this. Right? And the next time they do it, it's just going to work again. Well, that's it. Don't want to leave it on downer, but, that's just what's going to happen.